Roll call, please.
Mr. Berminski? Mr. Haas? Ms. Howe?
Here.
Mr. Kelleher?
Here.
Mr. Perry?
Here.
Ms. Saban?
He's here, but not in the building, right, not in the room.
Mr. Schnee?
Present.
Mr. Urban?
Here.
Mr. Vogt?
Here.
Ms. Wakes?
Present.
Mr. McGinley?
Present. Okay, any additions or deletions to the work session agenda? I would just like to add one item, that would be a summary of the collective bargaining agreement that was passed earlier. I'd like to put that in at number 9. No one has any objections. And make the manager's report number 10.
Hi, Sharon.
We have a motion then to approve the agenda with that addition.
So moved.
Mr. Kelleher, Mr. Snee, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, any abstentions, none heard. First on the agenda, the Blighted Property Committee presentation.
All right, Mr. Chair, I apologize I can't be there in the flesh,
Yes,
but I'm sure we've got several members of the Blighted Property Review Committee there,
we do.
and they are going to take it from here. They're colleagues of people, and you've met most of them before.
Okay. Mr. Prehead, would you introduce the people from the
Yes,
committee
I
there?
will. Thank you very much for having us. So the Blighted Property Commission is chaired by Harry Haas. Also Eddie and Neil. Where's Eddie? He's here. Scott Lindy, Andrew Holter, and George Hatton. Also part of the, they're not part of the commission, but very much part of this process was Sharon. We have Caitlin Twigger, Andy Riley from the Luzerne County Authority, and James Ferry was also. So we put together 5 slides to give you an overview again of what the Blighted Property Commission is. And then we have, what, 3 new members? So hopefully we'll get through this. We're gonna go through the blight statistics, which Andrew will handle, urban redevelopment law, which Caitlin will handle, the roles and the process, how it works. I'll take the lead on that, and then the rest of the committee can.
If you would speak into the microphone so everybody
Oh.
may hear, and
I'm sorry.
people watching at home
Were
may
people-
have to, please.
Did everybody hear that?
Okay.
Okay. Oh, and I should also want to mention that these 2 fine gentlemen have been with us the whole way, and we do appreciate your input coming to all the meetings. Thank you very much. So I'll let Andrew start with the first slide.
There we go. So again, my name's Andrew Holter. I'm the citizen representative on the Blighted Property Review Committee. And some of the things I just wanted to highlight were the statistics of blight and how it affects Luzerne County. These numbers come from the Public Policy and Economic Development Institute at Wilkes University that did this study. The first number you see up there is the total number of vacant dwellings in Luzerne County. It may not represent a total number of blighted properties. However, it could be a contributing factor. Certainly one of the conditions for blight that we look at is vacant and abandoned properties. The Institute estimates that of that number of 19,749, that 3,840 properties, homes in particular, are blighted. So using a median household price of what a home sale would go for in Luzerne County, that amounts to $293 million in lost property valuations in the county. So of that $293 million in value, a conservative estimate of the potential lost property taxes is $1.8 million. That's an annual loss of tax revenue to the county that these properties are not generating. Those are just the properties themselves that are under that blight condition. However, and I'm sure many of you either live in neighborhoods or communities where blight is affecting maybe a house on the block from you or down the street, those have implications on your property values as well. That range is estimated somewhere between 17 and $73 million that these properties are having an impact on. So it's not just the properties themselves, it's the broken window theory. These properties are drawing in more blight near them. They're drawing down property values near them, which is having a much greater impact.
Hi, I'm the solicitor assigned to the committee at the moment. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about is the law and the role that the Blighted Property Review Committee is supposed to play. So the Blighted Property Review Committee exists under the Urban Redevelopment Law. The Urban Redevelopment Law says in order for your local county governments to fight blight in your communities, you have to have this Blighted Property Review Committee. And the reason that you have to have this committee is because it's where the due process rights are worked out. So every property owner, their property cannot be taken without due process of law. That's your eminent domain law. You can't take it without due process of law. This committee provides due process to those property owners before the redevelopment authority acts. So the entire process, like the Blighted Property Review Committee, we're not associated with the seizing or the taking or the demolishing of the properties. We just provide a due process right before the redevelopment authority acts. In order for the redevelopment authority to act, we have to do this. If they don't, that's where the liability comes in. So if the redevelopment authority wanted to fight blight, wanted to take a property, and we weren't properly providing this due process right, so you don't have the Blighted Property Review Committee, you're not funding it, you're not using the resources that you should be using, and you still want to take properties, that's where the liability comes in. So so by having this committee and by funding it properly, that's how you avoid liability in fighting blight, which is why you have to have it. It's the due process right. It's there for the homeowners. The entire thing is we send out notices saying, the municipality says your property is blighted. We send out notices, and then we tell them, come talk to us. Tell us why it's not blighted. Tell us why we shouldn't act. Tell us what you're going to do to fix it. So the entire process is there for the homeowner to come and tell their story before anything happens from the redevelopment authority. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's take a
Mr.
look.
Prehead,
Anybody
which
hear me?
group do you represent?
What group do I represent?
Yeah, the membership on this committee.
Oh,
based
okay,
on-
so I am part of the Luzerne County Planning Board.
Mike, please.
Okay, I'm part of the Luzerne County Planning Board.
Okay.
Am I coming through?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I'll try to, there are three main pieces to this. The municipalities, as you can see, they do the heavy work. They do the applications. They're the ones who have to research the property and all the things that are listed there. Then we have the BPRC, which will then review all their work. And then eventually, which I'm going to get to on the next slide, probably should have reversed the slides. Eventually, when this process is ended, it goes to the redevelopment authority for potential of taking and demolition. So, go ahead.
Somewhere, do you define blight? What's a blighted property?
That's a good question.
It's in the statute. So the urban redevelopment law in the
Step
statute.
up to the mic, please. Thank you.
In the redevelopment law, it specifically lays out what is blight, and there's a checklist of, I think, 9 different things. And we've actually created our own checklist that you go through, and on the application you have, it's each individual our thing of blight. And if you have one or more of these things wrong with your property, and one of them is abandoned and vacant, there are, like, any violation of a municipal code could mean that you're blighted, technically. So there are all these, it's in the statute specifically, it lists out every single thing that could be blight. And then in the application, we make them, the municipalities have to say what they're meeting, what is the blight condition, and then they have to provide photos and information about what they've already done to try and remediate the blight. So it comes straight from the statute.
And King, with one caveat there too, the property must be vacant. This is not a chance to recoup taxes or come down something because the grass is too high. We're talking about just vacant properties that generally have been abandoned for some time, in many cases, many years. Thank you.
Okay, so the slide that's represented here is the overall process. We've tried to color code it. There's 1, 2, 3, there's 4 steps. And along the way, it could end in the first yellow section. It could end if the property owner fixes his property and does remedy. If not, it goes to the second step, then it finally will come to the BPRC where it will get certified as blight, and then eventually will be given to the redevelopment authority for either taking or demolition. So that's the overall process. Now, what you don't see here, and I didn't want to get into a lot of detailed slides, but there are 21 templates and forms that we've created. We've tried to make this as easy as possible. Caitlin did spectacular work. Andy, this whole committee has put together this process. It's done. All we have to do is now train the municipalities on how to use it. And I guess maybe at this point we talk about the funding, you know, this $15,000. I think I speak for collectively. We can't guarantee 100% that we're not going to go over $15,000 a year in administration fees. But the likelihood of that is almost the same. So if you're asking us, is $15,000 we're 100% sure we're not going to go over the 15? We can't guarantee it. However, based on what was it, some of the stuff we've been reading, I think they use $9,000 in a year. Now, we did also want to talk about, we are going to have training sessions, we're going to have workshops. So those forms, when that initial application is made, it's complete, it's done properly. And there's always going to be that learning curve. So the first year, you know, we'll probably see more of a pushback and more of an administration piece. We also would like to say that in the unlikely event we go to that $15,000 and we're getting close and it's November, we can say to the municipalities, we can't accept any more applications. We'll have to wait until January of 2019. So, are there any other questions? Because I know the two issues in December were the liability and this administration fee. So I want to make sure we're clear about that.
I have a,
Are you done with your presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
all right, I have a
Wickes?
question. So,
I'm sorry. I'm Scott Lindy. I'm the redevelopment authority representative on the board. And I just wanted to take one small exception. As we see it on the redevelopment authority, when it's finally, as it goes through this whole process, and hopefully 90% of them or most are settled before it comes to us, when it's given to the redevelopment authority, it has one other option, and that is to do nothing. Most likely, the redevelopment authority will do nothing on any of them that are controversial. We only want to be acting as the person that can do something at the end of this process. I've used the example, if somebody can't be found that owns the property and it's sitting in the middle of town and everyone else wants it down, well, the redevelopment has the authority to act and do it. But it's not going to sit there and take over additional responsibilities or fights. We want to be there as when this process comes together, if there's consensus at the low-hanging fruit, we then can act to put this property back on the tax roll and to work with it. But that's, I just wanted to make that point. So thank you.
Ms. Wickes?
so yes, so my question is, it appears from your presentation that this committee would be the, for want of a better term, the intermediary between the municipalities and the redevelopment authority. Am I correct in that assumption?
You want to answer that?
Sure. So, yes and no. It's not like a go-between. The municipality talks to us and we talk to the redevelopment authority. It's the step in the middle of the process. So the municipality wants the redevelopment authority to act, but the redevelopment authority can't act unless we work with the property owners to try and resolve it first. So it's like it's a intermediary step, but it's not necessarily a go-between between the two parties.
Understood. So why can't the municipality work with the redevelopment authority?
They can work together. They can talk together. They can work together. The problem is that in order for the redevelopment authority to do anything, they have to provide the property owner their due process right. And that's where the committee comes in. It's that due process right that even if the municipality goes to the redevelopment authority can't do anything unless we first try and work it out with the property owner.
All right, so the municipality is not able to provide due process?
No, you have to have this committee based on the law. It's under the urban redevelopment law. It specifically says you have to have this committee.
Okay, so since we haven't had this committee, does that mean the redevelopment authority has never, ever stepped in when a municipality has requested?
I don't think they could legally, from what I
Okay.
understand it. That's what's been somewhat rectified by this legislation,
I
and
see.
we're kind of following, I believe, in Berks County, some other counties. I think that this was a problem that was recognized. The legislature act on it. There's been several county municipalities that have handled it. We've picked it up. But again, when it comes to the redevelopment authority can't do anything unless it goes through this process, and it isn't looking to start foreclosing on a lot of properties that there's any controversy on. We would only want to act as that vehicle so that when this process started, there could be an end to it. And that's where the redevelopment authority stands at this point.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I got a question.
Mr. Urban?
Just a question about these blighted statistics. You said there's a total vacant dwellings of 19,749. I mean, and then you say houses 3840. What's the difference between a house and a dwelling?
So I believe as far as those statistics were compiled by the Public Policy Institute at Wilkes University, those terms were used interchangeably. So we're talking about vacant properties that are residential in nature. So whether or not it be a one or two family or a multifamily structure, that 19,000 count is the total number of vacant residential dwellings. Of that count, about 3,000, and whatever was indicated on the slide, I think 3,480 are estimated as blighted, or would meet one of the criteria that Kagan laid out.
So you're saying in the county, there's 19,749 houses that are vacant, that no one's living in, and of that, 3,840 of them are blighted.
Correct.
How many of the blighted ones are in the cities that you don't have any jurisdiction over? Pittston, Nanticoke, Wilkes-Barre, Hazelton?
On the public policies
Right.
research document, they do break that information down.
Right. Well, that's what I'm trying to get at. Out of these 3,840, how many of them are in Wilkes-Barre, Pittston, Nanticoke, and Hazelton that this county doesn't have any jurisdiction over because they have their own redevelopment authority?
Right, I mean,
So is that's the number I would like to see.
right, and that I can't provide you with right off the top of my head, but it is pretty evenly distributed. The other point I'd make to that, again, kind of speaking to that broken window theory, is that I don't think that there's a community in Luzerne County that doesn't have at least one or two blighted properties. And certainly as one starts, it kind of becomes an affliction that spreads. And so as much mitigation as possible that's available to us should be taken. Certainly as a code officer myself in several municipalities in Luzerne County, we've kind of reached our limit of what we can do.
Right.
And the Blighted Property Review Committee creates an outlet for us to address these problem properties that we kind of are at our limit at.
I think, in breaking down that number, I think that it's important because it would really tell me whether this is actually needed or not needed, because if 3,000 of them are in Nanticoke, Pittston, Hazelton, and Wilkes-Barre, then, you're looking at 840, which is a smaller number to look at. When you go down to Sanborn Street, right behind Abe's Hot Dog, and there's like 5 or 6 as soon as you turn on the street that are just boarded up, or the windows are all smashed and everything else on that street. I mean, it's something that's been there forever. You look in Wilkes-Barre at the Sterling Annex. I mean, it's not boarded up anymore. It's got places where people can crawl into. You go down to look at the building on South Main Street that the city owns, Planters Peanuts. It's boarded up, but everything in the back is smashed. You go and look at the building across from Shields Market, the old silk mill there that burned down and was boarded up, and everything is smashed. It's blight, and there's blight behind there on the streets, but a lot of it's in the cities that you don't have jurisdiction over. And where's the city at in all this, and cleaning up their act and getting these things taken care of? That's what's lacking here, because you're here to do this in the municipalities with small numbers, but the cities, I think, contribute to a lot of this potential lost revenue, and probably look at the taxes that aren't being paid to the county and to the cities, probably coming out of the cities for the most part, not out of other municipalities out in the country. And some of the people out there, I don't blame them. They're poor. They don't have the means to put a coat of paint on their house. Or you go on Cary Ave and look, and you'll see right down from Jerry's Pizza as you ride down there on Sturtevant Street or whatever. There's a big old white house there. The paint has been in 20 or 30 years, maybe since the flood. But I don't know, people don't have the means, I mean. it's
Right,
like
and
it-
I think, so I can address a couple points on that. I think one item is that if we can show success through the blighted property review process at the county level, maybe that can be an example to the cities of what that process can do. The second to that, the homes that haven't been painted in a while, and the folks that are occupying those properties that don't have the resources necessary, in my 13 years of experience, are rarely the cases that I run into as far as blight is concerned. As Mark had pointed out earlier, most of these properties are abandoned or are in some kind of limbo state between a bank that doesn't want to own it and a property owner that's absent. I know certainly a lot of the properties that I personally deal with in property maintenance issues, the owners are not living in them. Like more often than not, they're not even living in the state. They're somewhere absent, and that their interest and invested interest in that property and the community is not there at all. But this process gives them the opportunity to say, please come to us, see if we can find an option, and see if we can't get it fixed, see if we can't get that property back on the tax rolls. And I think, again, if that happens throughout the county, at least we can start to mitigate those issues where they're occurring. Like I said, I serve as a zoning officer in Wright and Rice Townships in Mountaintop and also in Laughlin Borough. And I can tell you that those communities are afflicted with blight. And those are certainly not, the cities that you would think of being affected by those blight issues.
Can I say something really quick too? Based on the statute, the property has to be vacant in order to be certified as blighted. So it can't be a house that someone is living in and they just can't afford to paint it. It has to be vacant. Additionally, I think Sharon might like to come say a few things. She's our lovely clerk. She knows a lot about this.
But isn't there also a provision, and I've seen people buy houses at tax sales, buy 4 and 5 of them, and they boarded them up and they're fixing one a year. As long as that thing is boarded up and the taxes are paid, what are you gonna do to them?
Well, that's what this is for. The tax sale is completely different.
Right.
So this would be another option of what to do with those houses that are just sitting there boarded up. The municipality could see that house sitting there boarded up, blighted, vacant, and they could bring it to the committee for action. And it doesn't matter that the taxes are paid. You can have your taxes current and still be a blighted property. It just has to be vacant.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
The timetable, when people leave their house, how do we make that a quicker turnover? If, like, the property is salvageable, how do we make that timetable quicker? And the reason I'm saying this, in Hazleton on Diamond Avenue, there's beautiful Victorian houses years ago. And you see them leave, and then either they couldn't afford it through divorces, I'm not paying anything. How do we quicken that, at least to get them winterized? Number one, to shut off all the utilities, so when we do have somebody interested in one of them houses, they're salvageable. If I'm gonna put $100,000 in, down the line, I wanna get my $100,000 out. I'm not gonna put $100,000 in to a $40,000 house. How do we quicken that timetable?
So you want to find a way to for remediation on the progress sooner. You want to remediate the problem sooner.
Yeah, so it's like
Right.
I'm saying, these Victorian houses, how we
There's
could
really
get those
not-
utilities at least shut off.
Right, there's really not anything this committee itself can
So
do.
pipes aren't breaking all over the
Right.
place and the
I-
ceilings are coming down.
I 100% understand. There's just nothing that this committee itself can do because the municipality has to go and do those code enforcement things before it even comes to us. We can't just jump onto a property. It has to be presented to us by a municipality after they've already tried to remediate the problems. So by the time they get to us, there's nothing we can do to quicken the progress. It's legal rope. You have to follow the rules. You have to follow the procedure, and we can't skip anything in the procedure. So it takes how much time it takes, unfortunately.
Well, I think the numbers are against you also. I think we're outmanned, especially in the Hazelton area, like code enforcement officers to what's going on is, we're outmanned.
Yeah, so
Well, hey,
so both,
if I could answer that too.
yeah, so to Mr. Urban and as well,
Perhaps.
just,
Excuse me.
oh,
Mr. Haas, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I'd love to chime in on that. And Bob, what you're talking about, I think I heard Kate Twigger say it. It truly is it's a local code enforcement issue. And what we're running into, so many municipalities across Luzerne County, across Pennsylvania, don't have the resources to do that. This is a real epidemic. And what this committee really tackles are those properties that are so far gone. In many cases, they're not salvageable. They've been vacant and sometimes for decades. And that's why when we look at this stuff, we're talking about the worst of the worst. And these are vacant properties only. They're not people, we're not kicking it, but the aim of the community is not to kick anybody out of their homes, but it's to really get some movement on the worst of the worst so that we might be able to leverage that to salvage some of those homes on that block, in that neighborhood, that maybe you can work with and maybe you can save. But if we don't have this Blight Property Review Committee in place, the worst of the worst are going to remain. And nobody's going to want to buy and invest in a property next to a derelict property like that. And we see this, it's like a tidal wave going across our canyons. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Sharon, you want to?
I don't have a lot more to add than the committee has said already, but I've been posing as their clerk to get the process up and running. And what I can say is there really is, you're correct, only one type of house that's going to be solved with this whole process. The municipalities have probably beaten themselves to death trying to find the owners, citing them, doing everything they possibly can. This property, no one's there, it's dilapidated, it's falling apart. They can't find anybody, they've issued citations, their hands are tied. They can't go any farther. The redevelopment authority can't take it, and the municipality can't demolish it or take it themselves. The state, this law that came into place is, in order for you to get the redevelopment authority to do something with that property, there has to be a certification process, and there has to be what's titled a blighted property committee. And it's almost like a checks and balance to say, yes, I reviewed everything that the committee has done. We ourselves sent out letters to find the owner, posted the property, gave them a few chances to say, come out of the woodwork. And if that still fails, we just put our stamp on it and says, yes, it's a blighted property, and then the redevelopment authority can tear it down. They can take it by eminent domain. They could do nothing, but at least it's the stepping stone to get from a municipality that can't do anything to get the redevelopment authority to give them the assistance they need. Without this certification in the middle, the property will sit forever. They're correct. And my role up till this point is really just to maintain the minutes, record the meeting, prepare an agenda. If this gets off the ground, the clerk or whoever would be in this position would receive the applications from the municipalities, put them in order, put them on an agenda, and when they meet every other month, let the committee review it and say, send out the notices, try to find the owners, and be that stepping stone. So the committee right now needs manpower to do that, a place to hold their meetings, and funding to send out the mailings, to send out somebody to post the property. And that's where this committee is right now, is they've done all the homework, done all the forms, and now going forward, instead of using Kate and myself, or to continue to use Kate and myself, they need council and the redevelopment authority to say, this is what we'll provide, this is what we won't provide. I think that's where we're at with everything.
Okay, any other questions with the committee? 1 second.
Andrew?
Yep.
1 second. Any other questions? Go ahead.
I just wanted to address the concern earlier about the number of blighted properties that's estimated in the city of Wilkes-Barre. According to that public policy report, it's 56 blighted properties in the city of Wilkes-Barre to that 3,000 count.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. Number one, $15,000, I don't know how you came up with that number. But obviously, the county's already invested with a solicitor providing services to you, and also the clerk providing services on a regular basis. So we have a large investment already. The $15,000 would not cover their time, either one of them. So I don't know how you came up with the $15,000 or if that's more available or what, but that is a very definite question.
So the $15,000 is what the redevelopment authority put in their budget
I know
to
that.
put towards this. I don't know where they got that number specifically. But as far as Sharon and I are concerned with the investment and what you're providing, this whole issue arose because the statute, the ordinance specifically said that the redevelopment authority would make their solicitor available.
That's
And then the
correct.
county was providing our solicitor, which was not necessarily okay with that. So we said, what about funding? If the Luzerne County decides to fund that, then they could put some money into it that would then pay for Sharon and I. So that money is going,
Well, but we're already paying a salary for you and,
but it was intended that we would bill out my hours to the committee, and it would be reimbursed by the committee's budget, out instead of coming from the county's budget. So I'd be being paid by that committee, billing the hours out to them, which is how it would be covering my time. So it wouldn't be an additional investment. They'd be billing out my time to the committee so that they could keep the ordinance the way it was, that they were making me available by funding me by that money going to pay for my salary. So that's how it started, if that makes sense.
no, it makes sense, but I don't believe $15,000 would cover that cost. That's
Based
just
on
my
the-
opinion, though.
Based on the hours I put in so far, I can say it would, safely.
Okay. Who is, Mr. Lindy or Andy Riley, you want to talk about the
You asked
redevelopment,
about
deciding on
where
that?
we came up with the $15,000. I mean, I think it's a good number at that point. I think the redevelopment authority is committed to doing it. We just needed a budget item to start off with. I think, like we said before, in one respect, the redevelopment authority can do nothing. So when you hit $15,000, you could stop. But we don't want to do that. We want to try to do it. We just have to have a partnership with the council and with all the people like we've had to get this going. And as a businessman, I really hate, excess taxes and costs, but this is an investment. This will return multiple times back to the community in any kind of investment you would make in starting this blighted thing. This is not an expense. This is an investment, in my opinion.
Well-
Yes.
In looking at other redevelopment authorities
Mhm.
in similar situations in counties, and doing the same type of thing, was the $15,000 a common number? Was the $15,000 less of a number because or a larger number because of our size? Like, where did, 15,000 is a good number, like your six, okay? But really, what is the number? What would a good number be compared to other counties
I
that
think-
have this going on?
I think somebody else can answer, but I think it just started, so we don't have it from the other counties, but possibly. But, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I don't have a number, but I did do some research for Harry, and I contacted the counties that have this in place. Some of them are not home rule, some of them are the commissioner form of government, but in all cases, the clerk of the county did the work. They didn't have bills to pay because everybody who was already in place just worked to make the program work. They didn't have a lot of additional expenses because they didn't farm out, or I don't want to say farm out, but they didn't go outside to hire a clerk, to hire a solicitor. They used what they had in-house. So, I mean, I'm sure there are expenses as far as postings and maybe hiring a sheriff or whatever would be needed from time to time. I don't know about the solicitor, so I can't answer that, but I know that the counties themselves, everybody shared. It was not only the redevelopment authority, it was the community development and the county, all three. Some people have it structured differently than we do, where community development ran with it, was the top person. Some had the redevelopment authority, the council actually ran it, and what they did is they doled out the money and that they put liens on the municipalities that took the money when they had this demolition fund, and I'm getting off track, that was the additional fee that would be with the deeds, and they had this pool of money so that the municipalities could pull from that to demolish. They didn't just hand out the money, they put liens out on the houses and made the communities, once the houses were remediated and sold, pay that money back to the pool, so it was an ongoing thing. But I got off track, but in the basic question is, this is all done in-house in most all the other counties.
Mr. Riley or Mr. Lindy, Is there more money available from redevelopment?
I think the reason why the redevelopment authority did not provide counsel, for instance, is that we have a counsel that's hired, but that works for an outside firm, and we're billed on an hourly rate. I can say that, you know, if we were to use the redevelopment authority's counsel, the 15,000 could be gone in 3 months, unfortunately. And as Sharon, I think she hit the nail on the head, in all of the other situations, the county, whether it's a county council, county commissioners, have decided that the Blighted Property Committee is a priority for them. And they've given the committee the tools to do the job. Now, it's fine if this council decides that it's not a top priority, but if you're going to have a Blighted Property Committee, I think you have to help provide the tools to do the job. And whether that's dollars or whether that's staff, that's really the bottom line here. No community development office or redevelopment authority office takes this on its own and has its own money and runs with this. It starts with the county. And so in a nutshell, I mean, it's up to the council to decide where this committee ranks as a priority on the list.
So my question was, does redevelopment authority have more money that they could offer?
Not at this time.
Okay.
The budget was passed, $15,000 for 2018. Again, it could be revisited if the costs were more for 19, but at this time, the authority passed a budget with $15,000.
Thank you. Mr. Lynn, do you want to go to the microphone if you want to speak?
I'm sorry. I mean, you say, does it have more money? I mean, if we get to November and we have 2 more months, do we have another $4,000 or $5,000? I know that the people at the redevelopment authority would not, you know, stop at that, but that's what we've budgeted because we think it's a fair number and we think we can get through it with your help.
Okay. Anyone else? Well, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for your work. I know it took a lot of work to get things up and get to this point, and the council will have to make some decisions based on where we are at this point. Thank you. We have a gentleman from PennDOT.
Thank you, members.
Excuse me? Oh, did you say, Harry?
Thanks to the members for, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank the members for being there tonight, taking the time out. And apologies that I couldn't be there in person.
Okay. Mr. Haas also offers his thanks.
With us tonight is Mr. Ritzman, who's there working our computer at this point. Mr. Ritzman came up from Harrisburg tonight in order to present to council regarding the $5 fee. He's going to answer some questions, have a short presentation. If council has any questions regarding the next steps.
Sir, is it Richmond?
Ritzman, R-I-T-Z.
R-I-T-Z?
Yes.
Thank you for coming up. We appreciate your presence here. That works. Thank you.
No, thank you. Sorry I'm not standing. This way I can push the buttons a little bit better.
The people behind you probably appreciate the fact you're
Okay,
not standing.
thank you. My name is Jim Ritzman. I'm the Deputy Secretary for Planning at PennDOT. I've been with PennDOT for a little over 33 years, and I've been, this is my 12th year as Deputy Secretary for Planning. I did want to share a little bit of insight and answer some of your questions with regards to the background of the $5 fee for local use, as well as the local bridge bundling opportunity that's we're presenting as well. As many of you know, Act 89, which raised some transportation revenue across the Commonwealth in 2013, established the fee for local use. So all the rules of how that works are included in that legislation. I know some of the questions had to do with asking about the department's work in collection, and distribution. PennDOT does not take any administrative fee. Every dollar that's collected off of those counties who have passed a $5 fee for local use ordinance, we collect that, the $5 added on to what the typical or the standard registration fee is. Twice a year, then those funds are distributed, and I think it's June and December are the 2 times in the period where those are distributed.
So you're telling us, and I think this is an important issue because we've had some people say that there was an administrative fee.
There is no
Every
administrative-
dollar that's collected by this fee comes back to the county.
Correct. And that's why it's called fee for local use, means it's raised locally, the money goes locally.
Thank you.
One of the things too that is always a question has to do with exemptions. There are, again, Act 89 talks about what exemptions are. There are some information sheets on PennDOT's website that explain what those are, and I'll just read some examples of them. State and local government vehicles, transit vehicles, emergency vehicles, retired status customer vehicles. People can claim to be, it's a self-certified retired status. There are minimum dollar thresholds that they need to, income thresholds, like it's about $19,600, something in that framework. But those kinds of vehicles are exempt from that $5 fee. Just, I have a snapshot here. At one point, CCAP, the County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania, asked for registration numbers. So these are from December 2016. Luzerne County had 304,205 registered vehicles. Of that number, 297,019 were non-exempt. So in that 2 to 3%, we can't estimate that because it's a range and people move, and some of those are applications. So it's in that range of what those represent. One of the things that I'd like to touch on is in February 28th of 2017, so about a year ago, PennDOT had a press event. Secretary Richards came out, so they talked about the roadmap. The roadmap was essentially saying the legislature passed a fiscal code that limited the amount of motor license funds that was going to the Pennsylvania State Police. So over a 10-year period, that will be reduced to $500 million. If you calculate what those numbers are, that adds up to $2.1 billion. So PennDOT said, here's what we're going to do with the $2.1 billion that will not any longer be directed from our motor license fund to the Pennsylvania State Police. As part of that package, PennDOT came out with our local bridge bundling program as well. So we talked about another program that says, hey, we really want to focus on local bridge investment. One of the reasons that we've done that, every 2 years, the State Transportation Commission takes a look at PennDOT, at our Transportation Performance Report, and they took a snapshot of saying, hey, these are the things that are important. It doesn't show up real well, but just illustrates the point. There's about 30, 35 items that they said PennDOT should really be focusing on. They gave us yellow for a cautionary, green means you're making progress towards something, red says, hey, you're not addressing the issue. The one thing that PennDOT got scored on with regards to not doing a good enough job had to do with local bridge investments. PennDOT has changed the way that we've been investing in road and bridge projects. 10 years ago, we had over 6,000 structurally deficient bridges on the state system. That's about 3,100 today. We've just thrown every dollar that we can, trying to hold the roads about the same way and minimize new construction. The added resources that we received, again, very heavily bridge focused. So in that same time period, where again, we went from about 6,000 to 3,100, local bridges that are structurally deficient greater than 20 feet went from 2,048 to 2,100. So at the same time we reduced by 2,000 or 3,000, local bridges went up, more structurally deficient. Again, if you just look at local bridges, In Luzerne County, over the 20 feet, you're at about 36% structurally deficient or in poor condition by number, and about 43% by deck area. That just means your bigger bridges are the ones that are bad. So recognizing that issue, one of the areas that we've not invested as much as we could be investing in the local bridge area, we tried to figure out what can we be doing. Again, Act 89 established a way for counties to raise additional revenue to stay within their county. What we wanted to do was increase that investment in local bridges. So what we wanted to do was encourage the counties that have made that hard decision with regards to raising revenues locally to address infrastructure that's in poor condition. So what we said was, hey, we want to double our money. We're sure that you want to get more out of your money too. So I could just throw money towards the local bridge issue, but by encouraging counties through this matching program, it doubles the state money that goes to local bridge investment, and it also doubles the local money that goes into bridge investment. So we saw it as an opportunity to really try to accomplish something that goes beyond, I'll say, our responsibility for the ones that we own. Similarly, I'll say sometimes we'll have counties that say, oh, my county-owned bridges are in good shape, but when you look at the municipally owned bridges throughout the county, they're struggling. So there's several counties that are looking at how can they collect the $5 fee and share that with the municipalities. Again, how many people know if the bridge you're driving over is owned by the township or the borough or the city or the county or the state? A lot of those are just, you don't know, but you know if you have to go out of the way. So that's pretty much how this is. It's a one-time offer. It could be continued in the future, but the Department of Transportation hasn't decided that at this point. So
it's a one-time offer for how long?
We need to plan to put that $2 million that we would give to set it aside for you. So the way we have it, we have some flexibility currently. Any decision like this, capital investment takes time. We would want to build it into the 2019 program, which needs to be authorized by August, pretty much needs to be squared away this time of the year. We were really pushing for October, November last year. I'll say $2 million isn't a lot for us to set aside. Our annual program's about $3 billion, so we can find it, but we'd want to know your intentions before too long.
The other thing that I think was interesting, and one of the things that had been talked about prior to coming this evening, you're telling me, I think you said that the money that was allocated to the state police portion is being reduced over a period of time?
Correct.
And that's where this extra funding?
No. That state money, that was going, the roadmap announcement talked about $500 million more going through to the interstate program, $600 million going through the typical state transportation improvement program process through the MPO, RPOs, and about $1 billion going to PennDOT for our maintenance. We've had some counties that have been that broke that at the end of the day, when you take care of winter and you take care of payroll, you can't buy materials. So in order for our county maintenance forces to be more productive, gradually the money would go to those counties as well, a portion of that. So this was just sort of at the same time saying, hey, we recognize we have a problem, is there something else that we can do? So the money that we would bring to the table to match that $2 million is a federal program. It's a surface transportation program, and it's a flexible account. Typically, PennDOT can't put state resources on a local bridge at this level. So this federal program is more flexible and allows us.
So it's a federal money that's a pass-through through
Correct.
PennDOT?
We would add it to the region's transportation improvement
All
program.
right, could I ask a question?
Absolutely.
If you're
Sure.
finished? Okay. Could we go back to the one-time, I don't know what deal or offer?
Yeah.
Is this for 1
well,
year? Is this what you're talking about?
No, it's, what we've said was, we, as part of that announcement in 2017, we said we wanted to try to make a bigger impact on local bridges. One of the ways to do that was to leverage local investment. So we wanted to encourage that local investment. We wanted to double the money that we were investing. So again, if there's 10 counties that take advantage of this, we'll put 20 million into the local bridge investment. Those counties at 2 million each would put 20 million. We'd get 40 million out of that.
One time, excuse
Yeah,
me, I'm
we-
very confused, and if you'll bear with me.
Sure.
Maybe this should be a two-part question.
Okay.
Okay. Part one, this idea of the county collecting, or the county imposing, I guess, the $5 per vehicle fee. Does PennDOT consider that to be ongoing for more than a year?
Typically it is. This doesn't show up very well in this room. There are 21 counties who've passed.
Yes.
That are currently passed. We actually had one county, Fulton County, was probably second out of the chute, and they withdrew. So they were collecting for less than a year. But I would say, in my mind, each region should have a plan for taking care of their infrastructure.
Well, I still don't understand. Are we talking about more than one, would we be committing yearly to collect, to impose the $5 fee
Ms. Wiggins,
until?
if I may, yes.
Yes.
The answer is yes. This ordinance would be up every year.
Every year.
Every year the county council would, now, county council has the ability to then opt out.
Okay.
So if you don't have to approve this every single year. If the county council approves this right now, then every year going forward, it's going to be $5 on the registration, unless county council makes the affirmative move to say we no longer want to be part of this. Is what Fulton County did and pulled themselves out of the $5 fee.
All right, but
The question I think she's asking,
No.
what if they pull out?
Exactly.
I would say there's no commitment long-term to do this again.
That's my
We
question.
made a
You're still
commitment.
charging the people $5.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
The
What she's asking you, and it's a little roundabout way.
Yeah, I'm sorry, please ask
The
your
fee-
question again?
The
The fee
$5
is something
fee.
that we would do.
Yeah,
We would
Correct.
collect
The
that.
state collects it,
and
Right.
would give it to the county.
but we could.
Say
and
they
they-
opt out of it. The
We could
state
opt
opts
out.
out.
We
Not,
could-
not us, Timmy. They opt out of
But
it.
then we could opt out.
Yeah,
We have that
the
right
only,
to opt
the
out.
only thing that I'm bringing to the
All
table.
right, they're not still charging the people $5.
No,
They
no,
won't.
no,
I
no.
think that's Linda's,
No, the only thing that I'm saying is if you.
James, sorry.
If you raise revenue through the $5 fee and you commit to using it towards bridges solely,
Right.
we'll work together and come up with a plan that says, here's how Luzerne County would want to use $2 million towards local bridges. And I would say I would bring additional federal dollars to the region of a level matching yours up to $2 million to say we can do another bridge, another series of bridges,
All
and
right,
get your
so the-
infrastructure
thank
taken
you.
care of.
That helps. Now, here's part two of my question.
Yes.
Thank you for answering part one. Part two, you bringing, or PennDOT bringing the federal funds, okay, which would make me very happy since I'm not even going to go there about the promises made to this country about infrastructure, which have yet to appear, but I don't mean to be off topic. Will PennDOT commit to continuing to match?
No.
No.
This is a one-time.
One time.
I'm not saying that PennDOT wouldn't reconsider down the road and say, let's do it again, because it was
Okay.
very successful.
Right.
And there's a lot of positive feedback and a lot of results that
Sure.
came from it.
Sure, I understand. Thank you for answering that. One last question.
Sure.
So far, 20 or 21
21. There are
counties.
21 active counties.
Why do you suppose only 21 have committed so far? Do you have any idea
Oh,
why?
I mean, I would say part of it's very obvious. There's political pushback. When you raise revenue, people hold you accountable.
I see. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, and
She asked all my questions.
Oh,
I got a
okay.
couple.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I got a couple.
Yeah, Mr.
Yeah,
Irvin.
Mr. Richmond.
First of all,
Mr. Haas, you're next.
this
Thank you.
$2 or the $5 match, the $2 million is not state money, it's federal money.
Correct.
Why do we need to go to you to get the federal money? Why can't we go to our state senator, our federal senators and our federal rep and get that money
Because
here?
there's federal law on how a state is required to implement that. So
Okay.
the Lackawanna Luzerne MPO works with PennDOT to put together a transportation improvement program, a 12-year plan and a 4-year STIP, statewide transportation improvement program. This would be additional money to the region that, over and above what's the normal distribution.
Well, the other thing is, this county, I believe, in Westmoreland County, probably have more bridges than most counties in the Commonwealth.
I would say Allegheny always jumps
Okay,
up as
Allegheny, all right,
first,
well,
but
Allegheny.
yeah, I can lead with, this is
Yeah.
the number of locally owned bridges that are over 20 feet, because
Right.
those are required to be inspected, so those are
Right.
solid numbers beyond that. You guys have 103. Montgomery has 261, Philadelphia 167, Berks 241, Allegheny 391. So there's,
And
you're in good
Right.
good standing,
Why-
top 10.
Why are we only getting $1 million in liquid fuels every year, $1 million to it? You know, this whole additional 30-cent a gallon gas tax was pushed as infrastructure. We're gonna make infrastructure improvement. Well, the state is making infrastructure improvements to the state bridges and the state roads, but they're not giving any of that money, additional monies in
Well,
large
actually,
facts down to the counties.
Actually, liquid fuels for townships and for other municipalities other than counties went up 60%
Right.
because of Act 89.
Right.
This was how the legislature chose to provide funding for counties. Some counties don't own bridges, some own a lot.
Right.
So that was how the legislature decided to address that issue.
Well,
But when I would look on we distribute about $600 million through various liquid fuels accounts to local government. When you look at, when you include the transportation improvement program, local government projects get about $1 billion a year.
Right.
So that typical process of the working through the MPO, about another $300–400 million a year get funded that way. It's not enough. I mean, that's the problem. It's not enough.
But the reality is that we tried to give those bridges to the townships, and they don't want them unless we put
Why
a new
would
one in.
they?
Well, the thing is, why are we responsible for maintaining them, and why hasn't the county's share of revenue been upped like you did to the townships?
Okay. Again,
that's another one.
PennDOT's implementing. We're implementing
Okay.
legislation. We're not making the
So our
legislation.
legislators aren't looking out for the interest of the county.
I would say they provided an opportunity for those
Wow.
counties who thought they needed to invest more. There was an option that they had besides raising real estate taxes or school taxes. I mean, they provided an option. We're encouraging that option whenever infrastructure is in poor condition. And I would say, if you look and say I have 43% of my bridges are in poor shape, I'd say you need a plan to address that. If this is your plan or not, that's your decision. I'm just saying 43% in poor condition is a problem.
Well, a lot of the bridges have been replaced in the past, thank goodness to the federal government during storm events, Tropical Storm Lee and prior storms back in.
I'd hate to count on emergencies.
And that's when they get replaced, you
Sure.
know, and, you know, you may have to argue about the width of them and make them a little wider and stuff,
Yeah.
but that's how the bulk of the new bridges have been replaced here in this county. But again, I think PennDOT and the legislators are shortchanging the counties on a share of money that we need, particularly the counties like ours and Allegheny and Westmoreland, who have a lot of money. And you, by simply saying, we can go down and put a fee on people and make them pay for more, the people are already paying at the pump.
I'm saying there's an option for you to consider.
Yeah, that's a little option.
Mr.
Not
Haas
enough.
is next. He's been waiting. Mr. Haas?
My turn, Mr. Chair? Thanks.
Yes.
Mr. Ritzman, welcome to Wilkes-Barre.
Thank
My
you.
name's Harry Haas. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. I've got a few questions as well. I'm kind of piggybacking on what Mr. Urban said. Can we have an itemization of how, I think it was through Act 89, the gas tax, what that exactly funds? Because I think the public perception out there is that our taxes went up at the pump, and now we just don't have much to show for it. Like, I acknowledge this, and I see this as a revenue generator, but it's still going to be another fee on our people. And I want to know if you'd be able to either answer that tonight, or if you could.
Sure.
Maybe
I would
be in
say there's.
correspondence with our clerk. And could you give us just a rundown
Sure.
of where
I would
that,
say,
that tax increase went at the pump?
There certainly was a revenue increase. It went into the first year, the third year, and the fifth year, so it's fully implemented at this point. The oil company franchise tax was uncapped. One of the things that I would say of that is back in the day, whenever there was the conversations about the revenue increase, there were a lot of charts that were shown that basically said, when you look at the resources that are coming to the Commonwealth, I'll give an example that comes fresh to mind, construction contracts, we were at about $1.5 billion annually. You'll see that gradually erode to about $1.2, $1.3 billion annually. With the added revenue, we're able to maintain about a $2.4 to a $2.5 billion construction program. So you're seeing $1 billion more each and every year because of that increase. And the resources were not just for highways and bridges, they were multimodal. Each year, both PennDOT and DCED have multimodal applications. About $150 million are distributed that way. Transit received an increase as well. Ports, all the modes of transportation were included in that funding package in 2013. But I would say right now you see a construction program that's twice what you would have seen before. And that allows us to make some improvements. But I'll tell you, the drive from Harrisburg to Wilkes-Barre still isn't real pleasant. And I'd also tell you that we don't have plans for widening Interstate 81. And you look at the traffic volumes that you expect to increase. We have a long-range transportation plan that says in 2040 we should expect 17 trucks every place there's 10 today. And how are we accommodating them? We're not. So while there was a funding increase, it's important to go back to the findings of that time period, and it was, if I get these numbers right, by 2020 we needed a $3.7 billion a year funding increase. By 2020 it was a $7.2 billion increase. We got 2.4. It was great. We're getting a lot done. We're not getting near done what needs to be. So it's always about making choices between, are you fixing the interstate? Are you fixing a 4-digit state route? Are you putting more money to bridges? Are you putting less money to the bridges? Are you doing any widening, capacity expansion, those kinds of projects? That's why we love the Lackawanna Luzerne MPO. It's a regional decision-making process where we work closely with regions across the state trying to make the best usage of the dollars that come to that area.
Mr. Haas, you have a second question?
Yeah, I appreciate it because, again, a lot of it went to the multimodal, especially SEPTA down in Philadelphia, to the state police for their doing. And again, people in general, I'm sure you've heard it before, they feel like they were hoodwinked, by the legislature again. And when this comes to that, when this comes up something like this, I'm rightfully skeptical. I'm passing on the skepticism of the people I represent. And I do appreciate the match. The $5 for $5. I get that. You're leveraging local funds. I understand that. Now, can I ask just if you can speak to this? We have 20 counties that are participating in this. That's a little less than 1/3 of all the counties across the state. Why now suddenly do we have a match? What changed in the PennDOT leadership or the legislature, whoever released this funding mechanism?
Yeah.
All of a sudden after 3 years.
I did try to explain that earlier a little bit, but one of the things that really came to the forefront in that same time period, February of 2017, was the latest Transportation Performance Report. That Transportation Performance Report looked at an awful lot of things. It looked at mobility and safety and accidents and things like that. The one area that didn't get I'll say a passing grade was local bridges. So there needed to be a change. And one of the ways to make this change was to encourage local infrastructure and local investment in that local infrastructure. And this was one of the approaches that we said we'd try. That's why it wasn't committed to do this every year. It was saying, hey, let's see if this makes a bump in those numbers.
Okay, so I saw in your notes, and they were very helpful, by the way, that you have an option to renew your registration, but not just for 1 year, but 2 years, so you can bundle it.
Correct.
And then that would still cost our Luzerne County taxpayers, or I guess I should say at this point, vehicle owners, that it will cost the vehicle owner $5 extra for the 2-year period.
Correct.
But what they would have to do is front the next year's registration fee. So doesn't that benefit PennDOT that it gets money in their coffers to fill up PennDOT's coffers in the meantime? Doesn't that have that benefits PennDOT?
I'm sorry, say that again?
We just get $5 passed back to us.
You're saying the biennial.
Well, he's saying this, you're putting the money up front for the second year, so that means more revenue for PennDOT.
For the biennial, because of the biennial. Correct. It would be sooner. It would be sooner rather than later.
He agrees.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it would be I mean, the one issue that you raised that I should have pointed out is that when you take a look at the 300,000 vehicles that are registered or whatever, you only get $5 with each registration renewal. So if they opt for the 2-year renewal, you get $5 instead of $5 in 2 consecutive years.
Right.
So we've seen ranges in the 20 to 25% in some counties. Obviously, it depends what you drive. I think if I had a new vehicle, I'd say, 2 years, maybe that's not so bad. I have a 1997 Ford Ranger. I don't know if it's going to be here for 2 years, so I buy it 1 year at a time.
Okay.
So.
Ms. Segman, I think you had a question?
Oh, I'm not done though, Mr. Chair, if that's all right.
I thought you said you had 2 questions, Mr.
Oh, I do, but there are multiple parts, forgive me.
Okay, go ahead.
Just, you know how I am, forgive me. If we go back to this, so we're saying that if the savvy taxpayer pays for the vehicle registration up front for the 2-year period, then the state will not, PennDOT will not match the lack of that $5 the next year, correct? So we'd only be seeing one $5 match, even though it's over a 2-year period.
I would just say this is like a coupon. It's a one-time deal. We're talking about it now. We wanted to get it squared away so that when we put together the 2019 Transportation Improvement Program, we have those dollars reserved for those counties who have worked through what specific projects and how they wanted to use their resources. So we're a little past due, but like I said, if I knew you wanted to do it, I can hold $2 million for you at this point.
Okay, and my very last question is that back in the 60s, the state, something a little unrelated, they offered to buy out the municipal road or the county-owned roads and bridges, and I think at least several counties, maybe 7 or so, took advantage of that. I remember Erie did. I think, I think maybe Cumberland County might have, and back in the 60s, a couple generations ago, in the infinite wisdom of our commissioners, we decided not to opt into that, and now we're stuck with the roads and bridges we have here. Do you ever foresee PennDOT offering something like that again?
No, actually, we have something called a turnback program where we try to give back the state-owned roads and bridges to counties and townships and municipalities.
Yeah, caring and sharing. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I might have forgotten the question by now. But looks to me like PennDOT got an F in education terms. And it would have cost them a lot of money to bring up that grade. And so what they're looking at is, because I don't have any idea what fixing a bridge would cost, but it can't be a little. It's got to be a lot.
Sure.
So this looks like an incentivized program for you, for your grade. Hopefully, it'll help our people
I would
too.
say that's one way to look at it. The other way that I would say is to look at it is they're not our bridges. They're
Okay.
not the Commonwealth's bridges. So
But you're
it's
still
looking
being,
for somebody
but you're
else to
still
pay
being
for something.
you're still being accounted. It's accountability
It's
for you.
accountability that the State Transportation Commission raised
Yes.
as a transportation issue in Pennsylvania.
Yes. So you're still, for an education thing, you're still being graded on it, whether it's your bridge or not.
Sure.
So what I want to know is just what we could expect, and I know this is really what does, or you've been around these 21 counties and you've had 33 years in this business. What can be done with $3 million in terms of our bridges?
Yeah, I'll just say what's being done with the $2 million. There's a couple different approaches. Some counties have recognized that it costs a little more to deal with federal dollars than to do things with your local $5. So what we've done, some of them have chosen more complex bridges. So we're getting one bridge taken care of in a lot of counties with the $2 million federal dollars. And then they're looking at using their dollars to do some rehabs of similar type structures. So they're doing, I'll say, some less expensive repairs with different procurement rules using local dollars than more so than the challenging federal dollar. So a lot of times you could say, I'm getting one bridge, I'm getting two bridges. You could replace a small bridge for, it all depends. It just depends how small it is. 600,000 to, you could easily spend 100 million on a bridge. So it just depends on what that scale is. But yeah, I would say most people have been opting to say, let's take care of 1 or 2 or 3 bridges that we can federalize, make them 100% federal. That doesn't tie the other dollars that you're investing locally in some of the different wage requirements or design criteria that you may not need to do.
Ms. Saban, the Division Street Bridge, which is a pretty extensive, the Division Street Bridge we talked about for a while, it's a pretty extensive bridge, is around $2 million.
$2 million.
Just
Other
ask
questions?
one more
Yes,
question.
absolutely.
I'm intrigued by your term. You said that the challenging federal dollars. Could you explain what you mean?
Yeah, I would say challenging state dollars as well. Whatever flavor of funds you have, there are certain rules or requirements that go along with it. So oftentimes, we get challenged as to say, oh, well, that's going to cost me more if it's a federal dollar. If there's different prevailing wages required or different permit requirements or different ways you have to acquire right away, each of those different flavors of funds bring different requirements, whether they're procurement requirements or contract criteria. So I would say each one of those has a little bit of different nuance to it. Sometimes the dollar doesn't go as far as if it was just I'm fixing something on my road, at my house, and here's how we're going to take care of it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much.
you.
Appreciate your time.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you for enlightening us on some of these questions.
If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer
I
those
think
as
Mr.
well.
Haas said about that breakdown, if you could give us that breakdown of where some of that money goes from the gas tax.
Okay, it's a complex
Yes, please.
question.
Yeah.
Is this something I could call you?
Or send it.
Okay.
Email?
I'm afraid that I wouldn't be adequately answering
Well, send
your.
the email if you would, and then
Okay.
if we need clarification, we
Okay,
can
is
call
it
you.
okay if I
Correct, sir?
coordinate with Dave?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Please send your contact information. That'd be great.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Mr. Gavlik.
Good evening. Thank you for fitting us into this busy agenda and getting us an opportunity to take care of this early on. As you know, in your packets, we received our, LCT has received our, PennDOT Act 89 operating funds notification as to what our allocation will be this year and the requirements for local match, as that seems to be a common word tonight. And in the documentation, we are here to respectfully discuss the county's local match for this year, for the fiscal year beginning July 1st of $619,437. And as you know, you may or may not know that 85% of our budget is a subsidized budget. It comes from federal, state, and local subsidized funding. 15% only comes from fare box revenue. So we are highly dependent on the subsidies and the grants that we receive from the various levels of government. So the help that we get from the county is greatly appreciated, not only by us, but by the citizens of the county who ride our buses and vans, who we take to work every day and take to the doctors and the grocery stores and to Francis Slocum in the summer. So we all appreciate the fact that we're able to provide those services. Without the local match of this 1513 operating funds, we aren't eligible to get the money. The match is required. Where it comes from is not mandatory. We just got to get a local match. Traditionally, it's been this body that has been good enough and gracious enough to provide that funding. And we are then able to obtain over $6 million in funding from PennDOT for your investment of $600,000. And in the past year, I'm proud to announce, some of you may have seen the news recently, but in a couple of weeks, we're going to be adding night service. One of our objectives, led by one of our board members is here tonight, who driven this for years. It's one of the number one things we've been hearing from constituents and from riderships and our board. We will be providing night service in a couple of weeks. Our drivers are going through the bidding process now. And the main gist of that was to get bus service into the industrial park so people can get to work, get home and to work. Focusing on Center Point up in the Pittston area and Hanover Industrial Park. Buses will also be going to the LCC campus, to downtown Nanticoke. They'll be going to Pittston, to the west side. They'll be going to the mall, the casino. So we're having 4 buses, loop service, and it'll be running until the last buses coming in from the industrial parks will be coming in after midnight to allow those folks who get off work up to midnight a way to get at least close to where they may live. They may not get them to their front door, but it'll get them back to at least their neighborhood in Pittston or Nanticoke or the west side where they live. So you may have also noticed that we have just been notified this past week that we were awarded a grant from the federal funding to purchase 4 additional CNG buses. We had 3 previously. So we have 2 currently ordered. 1 we have another grant for, and we just awarded a grant. So we have a total of 7 new CNG buses that'll be coming, 2 of which will come the end of this year. The remaining 5 we don't know yet. We're working it out with the manufacturer to see if we can get them in on the order. It takes them, there's about an 18-month backlog. We're hoping we can get in, jump the line somewhere, and get some of those a little sooner. In addition to that, we have also been, through the MPO, awarded a full 100% funded grant of $240,000 to replace every bus stop sign in the system. So that will also be rolling out at probably the end of the summer when the new buses come rolling through. The new bus stop signs will be larger, more colorful. They'll have spots on them for a bus stop number, which will coincide with an app that we're working on that folks will be able to use. You can see the buses now in real time, but we have a specific app that we're working on that's going to be designed to work just for that system. Would also maybe integrated with payment systems. PennDOT's also working on a technology project that will replace all of the hardware and a lot of the stuff that's on our fixed route buses. So a lot of that stuff is pending. And probably one of the most major projects that's still pending that we've been working on, as you may have seen in the paper as well, is that we're in the process of attempting to purchase the Murray Complex site down in Wilkes-Barre, which has been vacant for, I guess, the last 14 years. And all of this actually comes from Act 89 of PennDOT funding. They're providing the resources for this to happen. We're pretty close to getting there. They've got phase 1 and phase 2 environmentals are completed. Phase 1 archaeologicals are completed, and we were waiting on a decision by, I believe it's called the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission, to review that last piece and see if they wanted any further archaeological testing of the soil done. If they don't, we probably will still be on schedule for appraisals and potentially a groundbreaking by early summer on that property to move that forward. We're told the timeline at this point, if everything continues to move along, we're looking at probably a move-in date of the fall of 2019. And that will be, as you know, some of our shared ride divisions in 44 in the county facility there. Our main operations on Northampton Street in Kingston. This will move us from a 4-acre site in Kingston to a nearly 14-acre site in Wilkes-Barre with new administration building, maintenance garages, CNG retail filling station that'll be open to the public, as well as an internal station, and as a maintenance facilities administration, everything will be into one location. Potentially some bus stop locations there where our buses will also utilize that location, as well as the intermodal downtown. So we've not been standing still. We've got a lot of great projects. We've been a lot of expansion in addition to the night service coming over the last year or so. We've added the number 2 route, which is a Pittston circulator that circulates up in Pittston. That was allowing people to get around up there without having to come back and forth to Wilkes-Barre on another bus. We had added the 19 route already about 2 years ago that was going into Center Point. With the addition of, and our work with some of the employers down in Hanover Industrial Park, we're working on expanding our number 13 routes there, Chewy.com in Hanover Industrial Park, and now the 2 additional employees there, as well as what's coming in the other side of the park. the ridership on our number 13 route going into Hanover Industrial Park has tremendously increased with employees from Chewy and now Adidas and Patagonia. We're meeting with them in the next week or so to talk about they're finishing the road now into that section there. North Point's going to put 2 bus shelters in there. So we have to retime that route in order to get it through the park, and we may end up having to put an extra bus on that route. So we have a lot of good things going on, a lot of projects. We've done a lot of expansion. We're providing a lot of services. This past year was also the first year, I believe ever, that we provided public service, transit service out to the Lehman Fairgrounds for the Luzerne County Fair. For 4 days it ran. We provided free bus service for the airport air show up there for those 2 days that ran. So we're trying new things. We're putting service out there. We're trying to, we have a very aggressive marketing and public relations campaign to get people riding the buses, community events, training programs, working with schools, to get students involved, get a student advisory panel involved. We have a community advisory panel that meets quarterly. So we have a lot going on. So with that, I know if there's any questions, I'll be glad to address any questions about any of the funding, the numbers, or any of the other projects we're working on.
Mr. Swets? In the present budget, what do we have allocated?
We have funding to cover the present year budget. I would just remind council, and obviously it's not a voting meeting, that if this is approved, it will be approximately $636,000 next year. As was reported in the paper, we're under 15%. We move up at a 5% increment. So we have funding for this year, and if it was approved, it would increase our funding for next year.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Gavlik,
Okay,
for
thank
your
you very much.
information and your summary. We appreciate it very much. Mr. Wico, where's in the back of the room there? Yeah, Wico.
Mr. Chair, tonight in front of council is Wico Van Genderen. He's the president, he's the executive director? President of the Wilkes-Barre Chamber. Before county council is a resolution approving forgiveness of a certain amount of loans that the Wilkes-Barre Chamber has accumulated over the years from Luzerne County. The bulk of the forgiveness that we are working with it would go to the Community Development Fund. So that's the federal monies that wouldn't go to the general fund. When I looked at this particularly, one major thing that stood out for me was that under this proposal that Mr. Van Genderen is going to review with you, the chamber will be paying back dollar for dollar every dollar that they borrowed over the time period that in question as to where we're at. With that being said, I'll turn over to Wico.
Terrific. Mr. Chair, County Council, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. My name is Wico Van Genderen. I'm president of the Chamber of Commerce. And about 3.5 years ago, on actually my second day on the job, I came to the County Council, met with a number of you, do see a number of new faces. And I will say for the new faces that when I did come here on that first day, I said that as a chamber, we were going to get out of the real estate business. We're going to refocus on economic development, job creation, workforce development, and advocacy for the business and the community, and that we would pay out our debt obligations so we can become financially stable once again. 2 years ago, I met with you again. We'd gotten through our commercial debt obligations, began paying our county debt in earnest. We worked out the sale of the Innovation Center, used every penny of the $2.6 million to pay down the debt, and just as important, it allowed a developer to invest in that innovation center, and in so doing, spark some of the downtown buzz that you're seeing in the center city along with the schools to make us an innovation district and research center of excellence, which began a lot of what we're seeing being born out in the downtown today. Relative to our industrial parks, hopefully you've got this handout in front of you. Today we see industrial parks that house over 12 million square feet of business space, and as depicted in the handouts, have over 300 businesses, 14,000 people working in those parks, and today contribute close to $10 million of annual taxes to the county, the townships, and the school districts in millage rates alone. Mind you, 30 to 50 years ago, these same parks were scarred strip mines and coal slags, and that no one wanted and had to be significantly mitigated. Today, we're also seeing a downtown that is getting redeveloped, with our train station on the Eastern Gateway getting a facelift, North and South Gateways getting significant focus by Wilkes and Kings, exemplified by repurposing some of the empty buildings that we're working with them on, like the Springbrook Building and the Sears Building. And the Western Gateway, Citizens Wyoming Valley and PNC Bank buildings are now by the waterfront being repurposed into apartments. And now we also have plans for a mixed-use condo business center retail space in the Sterling site. And finally, in the center city, public squares filled with restaurants, retail, entertainment, offices anchored by Guard with their headquarters. We got to stay, and plans to add 300 people to the 500, contributing to $29 million in economic impact. And while I will absolutely admit to you that we have a long way to go, and we're still 3 years into a 5-year strategic plan, we've also, I think, hit another milestone opportunity, and that's hopefully with your affirmative vote, then we can work through this, and that is to pay off the last piece of debt owed to the county HUD revolving loan. You know, when I started 3.5 years ago, we had a $13 million debt obligation, and over the past 3.5 years, we've diligently been selling real estate and using every penny of it to pay down our debts. We paid out our commercial debt, we paid out the city debt, and now we're on the home stretch for the county HUD debt, which should you vote on this plan, we will use every penny of it against what we had borrowed. But we're also asking forgiveness of the penalty and interest. But I want to note to you that when you look at the HUD piece of it, HUD never expected penalty and interest. What they expected was jobs and economic development. And with 14,000 jobs, 300 companies, and a 10 million tax base, I think we've met that obligation. In addition, the sale of the bulk land purchase that we're about to do, much like the sale of the last few sales, we brought more businesses to the area, and this bulk land sale will be no different. We'll provide more businesses and more jobs with the development of those parcels, which is part of the issue of those parcels, because until we get those parcels sold out, you can't develop on them. Once you develop on them, you'll get the land, and that's the jobs and the tax base. So I'm asking you for your support of this bulk sale parcels that we're doing in Hanover Industrial Estates, Hanover Crossings, and Crestwood, and we're going to use every penny. In fact, an additional $49,425.26 coming from the chamber funds to use every penny of it borrowed into that county HUD loan, paying back all of our principal obligation. And it's all spelled out in the documentation that we gave you. And I just wanted to see if there are any questions relative to what we're doing and where we're going.
Questions, please? Mr. Keller?
This debt, you inherited that, is that correct?
That's correct.
It was here when you came.
But it is an obligation we have.
I understand that, but I
President.
just want to make sure that we all understand
Yep.
that statement. Thank you.
Mr. Irvin?
Yeah. One of the things that I've noticed in this is that you were selling land down in Hanover Township.
Yep.
Right? Okay. You know you have an obligation, probably go back before my time on the commissioners, that you're supposed to pay the county a certain percentage, a certain fee on each acre that you sell down there. And probably around 2010, you owed us about $900,000. It came to the county, they asked for forgiveness, and we said no. We never got paid that $900,000. That was money you owed the county. I think that agreement is still in force today, and I don't think we've seen a penny of that $900,000. And that agreement was structured. You know, the county took over the infrastructure of those parks, Mountaintop, and it probably should have went to Wright Township and to the townships and not to the county road and bridge department. And they took over the infrastructure in the parks in Hanover Township. And as a result, the county was supposed to receive payment from the chamber for every acre that was sold, and I don't think the county's ever got a penny of that payment. So before I vote on this, I like to see that agreement abided by, and I like to see that money come into the county, or let this council forgive you of that $900,000 to $1 million that's owed this county.
Yeah. So Steve, good point. But first, let's step back. What we're looking for is the HUD
I
loan
understand, but
obligation,
I'm looking at it
as
as a
pointed
package.
out.
You're looking at.
So let me address that one. So the development agreement that you're talking about is from 1993. And it calls for the opportunity to use improvement dollars on roads according to that development agreement. Now, I've had our people take a look at that, and I've had some of our lawyers take a look at that. In that regard, if you look at a lot of that stuff, it is basically road improvements, correct? I mean, I think you might have been there when it all happened.
93, no.
Yeah.
I wasn't here.
So a lot of this stuff, actually, it's a question of and we want to take a look at that. So I'm not trying to say we're gonna kind of sweep that on the rug. But what I am saying is that if you look at the terms of that 1993 agreement, it says is if there are development done on those roads, that those the development dollars can be applied towards that, what comes out to the 900,000 that you talked about. So what I'm proposing that we do, but actually after we do this step, so it's the next step that we're going to do, because I think I've come to this council a lot saying we're going to go through the debt obligations, we're going to look at every single piece of it, of which that's one piece of it. So we're going to want to take a look at that, and I think the one thing that I was going to propose, at least to my board, is that we do a traffic study on that property, because it is really part of what you know is part of the South Valley Freeway exit right now. The road improvements that have been done a lot by where Chewy and Patagonia are going to come out over there, that one side of Hanover Industrial Estates. So there's been a lot of improvement done, and what we want to do is make sure that we do an accounting of that against the $900,000. Does that make sense?
Well, my understanding of that agreement said as you sell an acre of land, the money was supposed to come to the county because the county made improvements. The county put the initial infrastructure in there. The county's still maintaining the park down there and doing repairs on the roads when they have the money available. It wasn't, we're gonna deduct what other people have done. It's as land was sold, I think that's what the agreement says, as land was sold, the money, a part of that proceeds would come to the county to pay for the road improvements that have been done, not to discount us.
So Stephen, I'll get you a copy of that thing,
okay.
but on that thing, it does say, there is a stipulation in there of being able to use the development of the road against that, because that was the whole concept that at 1993 piece. It really was, make sure that you build all this. So again, 300 businesses, 14,000 people, that you can provide traffic patterns into those parks that would not cause additional burden on the highways. That's what that was all about, and I think that a lot of the things that have been done through the years have mitigated that, and that's what we want to do the traffic study on, to see how that gets applied out. But I am very much aware of that 1993 agreement, and I have a couple copies of it, and I've been looking at that last 2 years, frankly.
So we came in and asked for forgiveness, and there was a couple of articles in the paper about that back in the late 2000, I think 2009, 2010, and we said no.
Understand. Now, again, this piece is, this one that we're looking at today is the HUD revolving loans. If you look at the HUD revolving loans, it basically is stating in there too, same thing, is that it wasn't a question of penalty and interest on that. It was really to make sure that you provide jobs, that you do economic development, et cetera. Now, what we're doing, by the way, in this is that we're paying every penny of that on those 4 loans that we took through the HUD revolving loan piece. So once again, we're not saying that we're looking for any forgiveness against any money that we owed, but what we are looking for is against the penalty and the interest that were applied to that thing. And I would tell you, based on the fact that we've got 14,000 jobs on those industrial parks, I would say that I think it's reasonable.
With regard to the revolving loan fund, really briefly, that's the money that the feds have approved to allow us to utilize it from community development in order to help infrastructure for municipalities in low to moderate income areas. So any money that we receive from the chamber will hopefully increase that $15 million number, so we can help out infrastructure in our low to moderate income areas.
And in addition to that, this $3.4 million is followed by $1 million that we just did with some land sales that we didn't even talk about. So I mean, we've already put in, I think, if we do this, it's 3.4 plus the $1 million that we did through the land sale of 4A2, as well as also the PennDOT land that they use for the South Valley Freeway. So I want to make sure that gets pointed out. So that's basically $4.5 million that's going to be put back into that revolving fund. And my guess is, unless I'm missing something, I'm not sure from a chamber perspective, if the expectation was that you'd ever see that money back, I would tell you as a business guy, you gotta pay your debts. We are paying that debt, and that's what we're here for, to ask you, And for us, though, I need to make sure that I get this thing approved so that I can proceed with the LOI that I have with the developer, so that I can get this deal done, and so that individual can do some of the things that they want to do to add more jobs, economic development, and businesses to the area.
What's the timeline on your deal with the developer?
So, I mean, there's I've gone through our entire board, got all the approvals that I need from our board. So it's really just to make sure that I can do this piece so that, when I make that sale and give you the money, that it gets applied to the principal. That's where we are right now.
The developer hasn't put a deadline on anything, or?
They haven't put a deadline, but it's still an LOI, and I still have to get it to a purchase agreement.
Okay.
And I've not done that yet.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Question, Mr. Chair.
How,
Yeah, Ms. Hopp first, then yourself, and Harry.
from the sale, how much will remain with the chamber?
Zero. Every single penny of this thing, every penny of every real estate transaction that we've done under my watch in the last 3.5 years have all gone to paying debt. We have kept zero of that money.
So this
It's-
3.8 million payment through the sale of Glen and Hanover Crossings that you have listed under phase 3, that's the total of the purchase then?
That, the total of the purchase, it's, if you take a look, I don't know if, do you have?
And then you have a
this piece?
$49,000 phase 4.
That's right, that we're
Is
paying
that
out of
also-
our, yeah.
That's from your?
That's from our,
That's
because,
not from this-
yeah,
this
because
spreadsheet.
basically the developer came out $49,425 short of where we need to be to get out of fully paying the amount that we owe. And so I'm making it a point to pay that last, not asking for forgiveness of that $49,425. I am taking it out of chamber funds in order to do that. But let me make sure that I answer your question. If you take a look at where that money gets put into, the most of it is to the debt that you see in that first column. The tax obligations are a combination of you as well as the Poseidon property. It would be going to Wright Township and to the Wright Township School District. So that's basically where that's breaking out. And then there's an 18,000 sewer easement that has to go to the township as well. But every penny that we're getting from that developer will be used to pay off the remaining debt. Now, I hope that once we're done with this remaining debt, that now, again, we can focus on what we're supposed to be focusing on, and that's economic development and job growth. And then to your point, Stephen, I mean, I still need to go back on that developer agreement from 1993, but I do think that we've got a game plan and path to get through that.
Soccer, any other questions?
No.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Mr. Van Gadron, welcome to the courthouse.
Thank
Harry
you.
Haas here. Just want to know, I think you spoke out to Ms. House, but are there other taxing bodies that are also going to be granting tax forgiveness or debt forgiveness?
Yes.
Or is it strictly just the county, or is it borrowed from community development funds, so they're not involved?
So what I am going to do is I'm going to go to Wright Township and ask for also dispensation on the penalty and interest for their piece on this, but I've not put that in here as of yet because I have not had that discussion yet with them. But my intention again is to pay off to the penny the principal that we owe and that we owe to Wright Township and to the school district as well.
Okay, so yes, then there are other taxing bodies involved as well? Wright Township for this one and also Crestwood Schools?
That is correct.
Okay. And Mr. Pedro, you spoke, and forgive me if I didn't quite hear correctly. All these funds are community development funds. These are not general funds, correct?
No, that's incorrect. Now, the large bulk of it would be general, would go to the community development funds. But the county would receive $188,000 in principal taxes that would go to the general fund.
That's correct.
So we would receive $188,000 in 2018 that would go to our general fund in tax at this point.
What year is it?
Okay. And then the penalties of interest, would they be eligible for general funds as well, or are they community development funds?
They're community development funds other than, believe it's $32,000. $32,000. We're going to be receiving $188,000 in taxes. The chamber is asking for a forgiveness of $32,000, $550 in tax, interest, and penalty. So we would be a netting of about $150,000 in our general fund. Everything else in this $750,000 forgiveness goes to the $3.4 million number all goes to the community development fund, which would then I would hopefully be putting back on the street in that revolving loan fund deal with community development, helping out other municipalities in their low and moderate income areas.
Yeah, let me make sure that I'm
Do you know offhand?
How much money in the fund, Mr. Pedro?
Yes.
Currently in the revolving loan fund, $15 million.
Yes. 18 million. Okay, so we're going to be obviously adding.
So yeah, we're adding quite a bit.
That's $3 million to that or so. It looks like. Okay. All right. I appreciate that.
I was just going to be more specific. $3,425,706.84 is going to be to the county, of which $3,237,696.26 is in principal debt, which will go to the revolving fund. $188,010.58 is going to be in tax.
That's
going
correct.
back.
I apologize.
No,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
No, you're right. You're right on that. I apologize.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate the fact you're here this evening.
Thank you.
For some help with our clarification.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Swets? You can do the introductions, please.
Yes, I will, Mr. Chair. We have two representatives from ADP with us tonight. Sean Ingold, he's the sales manager, and Melissa Hitz is going to actually do our presentation tonight. It was at my request. We've seen multiple articles in the paper about this. I asked ADP to show what they can do. I'd like to remind council and the media that New World wasn't one of the 5 people who bid. I can't give a contract to somebody that doesn't submit a proposal. So I want ADP to show some of the things that they can do, and then obviously B is to talk about the actual proposed contract extension.
Thank you.
While we're waiting, I can do the manager's report. Manager's report number 9 on the agenda. If anybody has any questions, email me on the manager's report.
See, Dave talks and it comes right out.
Move that right along.
Are you taking questions? Are you taking questions?
If you want.
Now it's gone again.
What happened to the trucks
Start talking.
that we replaced?
Still waiting on them. Haven't
The
received them yet.
trucks- No, but what are you doing with the old ones?
Eddie, what are we doing with the old trucks? The older,
Road and bridge.
There we go. Auction them off?
we're gonna auction them off.
How are the boilers coming along?
PennDOT, UGI will be there by the end of the month to sign them in.
Right.
Okay, we ready?
I think they're ready. Melissa Shell. Sam, go ahead.
Good evening to the council. My name is Sean Ingold with ADP. I'm also here with Melissa Hitz from ADP. I'm a sales manager, and Melissa Hitz is a business consultant or a subject matter expert. She'll be running through the demo. We anticipate taking probably 10 to 15 minutes this evening. So, thanks, Melissa.
If you would speak into the microphone, please.
So a little bit about ADP, first of all. Founded in 1949 in New Jersey. So we've been doing payroll for almost 70 years now. We are a fully scalable HCM vendor, which is human capital management. By fully scalable, I mean we could sell just payroll or complete end-to-end human capital management, so hire to retire, as we call it. ADP pays 1 in 6 Americans today, so we have a pretty big footprint, as you can imagine. I'm part of the dedicated public sector vertical, which we formed 8 years ago, so working with cities, counties, higher education. We have over 5,000 public sector clients today. You're in good company. We pulled a couple of logos of counties and cities that we're working with today. Some of the larger ones, Anne Arundel County in Maryland, Maricopa County, and City of Baltimore. I think each of those are over 14,000 employees, so we can deal with complexity as well. Just a quick recap of how we got here tonight. An RFP was obviously put out by Luzerne County in late 2016. It was due September 7th. ADP was awarded the contract. We won it, obviously. And the contract was signed on June 1st, 2017. We were informed that the current vendor, New World, did not submit a bid for the payroll piece. Our implementation began on August 31st, 2017. And currently we're around 70% of the way through the implementation with a projected go live of around the end of May 2018. Go live is obviously the term for once we start processing the payroll for the county. One more, thanks. There's a study out there by a research organization called PricewaterhouseCoopers. What the study, it was built on sort of decades worth of, or a decade, I'm sorry, more than a decade worth of information. Organizations were trying to get their arms around what is the cost of producing a paycheck, and it's pretty complicated. So at the end of this study, they determined that approximately 60% of those costs are hidden. So they're hidden in terms of IT spend, servers, whatever the case may be. It's not how, well, 60% is not housed within the payroll department. Only 40% is sort of visible in payroll. So it's a very difficult concept to understand how much it costs an organization to produce a paycheck. Can you hit one more? Thank you. So the upshot of the study was that from processing payroll in-house using software and going to a full-service vendor like ADP, organizations can save up to 40% in processing their payroll. This, as I said, this study has nothing to do with ADP. ADP just references it, but it is by an organization called PricewaterhouseCoopers. It is available on the internet, and again, I'd be happy to send that to anyone if need be. As I mentioned earlier, we're around 70% through the implementation. So there are areas that we're already impacting. So a couple of these here. Local and federal tax tables, we have found some discrepancies in those tables, and we're in the process of correcting them. Obviously, everything will be 100% corrected by the time that we go live in May. various system interfaces are creating the need for duplicate entries. So again, there's additional work being done by the county that we're pretty confident that we can eliminate. The county is currently not able to classify employees in the system. That's another discrepancy we found. Again, that will be fixed by the time we go live. And then ADP is also engaging our professional services group to manage employee communication. So again, nobody likes change, right? So we hear from a lot of organizations that rolling out a change, such as the payroll, it can be challenging. So our professional services group, or PSG, is engaged. They'll help the county with messaging, with documentation, that kind of thing, emails to pass out to the employees, so that everyone's kind of expecting it. It's not a last-minute change that takes everyone by surprise. With that being said, those were just a couple of slides on sort of how we're here tonight. Melissa Hitz, as I said, is a subject matter expert, so she's going to walk us through a couple of areas of the ADP Vantage payroll engine. Namely, I think we're going to do self-service, with employee self-service, what the employees are capable to do on their own, and then the mobile feature, which is obviously a big feature with ADP Vantage payroll. So thanks, Melissa.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. And I am going to get to show you how user-friendly this application is, not only for the employees, but for everyone that will be able to use the tool. So I'm logged in right now as an administrator. So Jonathan is my administrator. This is all of the information that he can see pertaining to his profile and his information. So he's really engaged because he has access to his own data and information, so he can see all of his data. He can view his address, he can view his pay information, he can view his time with the organization, he can view and request time off from here as well. Another great feature is he can kind of manage and see his own information and choose how he views his information. So, for example, he could, if he wanted to, choose what language he views the data in. He can choose to go paperless and receive his pay statements paperless if he wanted to do that. Also, we have audio eye technology. We're the only organization that has this available, so this provides and accessibility for employees that may be visually impaired, have other disabilities, cognitive disabilities. So we are the only organization that actually offers the audio eye tool. So your employees really get the full experience regardless. So what I'll show you here around the pay information. So this is not only going to be real accurate information with no errors, it is going to be all of the information the employees can view their pay over a period of time. So they can expand details around their taxes, they can expand details around other deductions, they can even view their pay trends. So let's say there was a change in their pay and they want to dive deeper and understand what the pay was and what it meant. They can look at their pay over a period of time. Also, the employees have self-service tools that will allow them to view and download their pay statements. I personally found this very helpful when I purchased a home and the bank wanted 7,000 copies of my earnings statements. I was able to print it at home on a Saturday morning myself. I didn't have to call anyone or ask anyone to do it for me. I was able to get it. So just another great feature, the employees have access to this information. It's their information. They don't have to call anyone, wait for anyone to get it to them or mail it to them. They also can view their year-to-date information. Oops, I just lost it. Sorry about that. Clicked the wrong one. They can view their year-to-date records, so they can print their W-2s directly from here, view their W-2 information. They can view and update their tax withholding information here. They also can update and make changes to their direct deposit. So here, if they wanted to add in a savings account or an additional account or something, they can make those changes here. We can have workflows set up to notify payroll specifically if, say, a change like that is made, of course, because payroll would want to certainly know if they change direct deposit accounts or something. But they have these self-service features where they don't have to actually fill out paperwork and do it manually. And they can view and set up additional deductions. We also have the ability to have links going to any other vendors that you may do business with, so your employees can have one portal, one place where they can go for all of their information, making it really easy for them to just log into one place and then have links going to other areas for maybe benefits or something like that that you may use.
The other area that I just wanted to give you a highlight of today is the mobile experience. So everything that you can do on your desktop, on your computer, you can also do on a mobile device. So the experience I just gave you briefly was from a desktop, but this is what it would look like from a mobile experience. So you can still view your pay information in the same format that we just viewed it on the desktop. So this allows your employees to have access to their information on the go from anywhere. They can view their time off. They can even request time off. So there's features that they're going to get with the mobile application that they don't have today. We have over 11 million users on our mobile app, and we're the #1 HCM rated app for our mobile device. And we found that with the changes in the workforce, it's becoming really competitive, and everyone really expects to have this information at their fingertips. They don't want to have to wait till Monday to get their own information that they may need. So having access to all of this information at their fingertips is really where our team developed and continuously develops the mobile application. So that was all that I had to show you specifically today around the payroll for ADP. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sure.
Questions? Any questions for our guests?
No, it's the same as I get at work.
What was that, Mr. Irwin?
Same as I get at work.
Same as you get at work?
Same as I get
Okay.
at work.
Anyone else?
All right, number.
I think there is obviously a lot more to ADP Vantage Payroll Engine. Again, just in the interest of time, we just selected two sort of areas to highlight.
We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council.
Mr. Sweats?
Can we move on to section B?
Part B?
Sure. So you have in front of you the submittal that I sent to council, and also, as we said, neither one of the ADP reps today is from the legal team, but this was the amendment that the legal team put together. If there's any questions on that or anything on the submittal, those are obviously for me, not the representatives.
Questions for Mr. Sweats? Yes.
Well,
Ms.
sure.
Howe?
Okay, so, if I read your alternatives correctly, what you're saying is that, if we don't approve, and this is a contract that would be before council for approval this time, right?
Yes, this,
Okay.
my understanding, and again, I'm not a member of council, would be that this would be on the next voting session.
Okay, and if we don't approve it, if we don't extend this contract for another 18 months, and then the other renewals that are also built into this, what you're saying is that you need to hire 3 people to do the work that we're currently doing, because we are doing payroll now, right?
Yes, I think there's a little bit of a distinction there. So, it's tax season, so if I'm going to get my taxes done, I can have an accountant that just got out of school do my taxes. And it may not be sent back. Good news, it was filed correctly, I didn't end up in the IRS. Bad news, I could have got more of a refund. I want somebody that's a specialist. Since I've started, I've tried to improve the department. We got audits done, we got our credit rating back. With the support of the majority of council, it wasn't all done by one person. So I'm saying, I'm not a payroll specialist, I want a payroll specialist to do payroll. I'd like to move the close up until January. If your item gets passed, which I didn't even look at, I would assume that's more work on budget and finance. I'm gonna be doing payroll all of January. So I'm trying to make the best use of budget and finance staff, myself and the team, and that's what the submittal is. If we want to pay ADP for what they did and leave the prepay go, I'm fine with what I have. But I think I said during the budget hearings, if you're gonna put this prepay on me, I'm gonna need a solution. So if you're gonna say, leave it go as is, and hey, let the audits come in as is, and the audit will be done in June, and we'll get the single audit at a later date, and our whole team will be doing payroll in January, and have a majority of councils okay with that, I'm fine with that too. If you wanna move budget and finance in the county forward, this is my alternative.
May I continue?
Yes, sure.
Okay. So we have been doing payroll for how many years? 200? Something like that. And so we, in essence, you've had a payroll specialist on your staff. You have been doing payroll in January. W-2s have to be out by January 31st. The audits have been done on time. People are getting paid. I get it. You have nice bells and whistles that come up along with this, but we're also $300 million in debt. They started out with a slide that said that they could give you, they could project savings to you. You've already said, management has already said that there is not going to be any savings. In fact, there's going to be an additional cost to this. The question is, how much are those bells and whistles worth? And what happens next year, because at the beginning of this year, when we had the State of the County report, the manager said to all of us, we had a great last couple years, but there are no more magic bullets. And so at the end of this year, he submitted a budget to us last year asking for a tax increase. What happens when there's no more bullets left in that gun at the end of this year, and he has to come back and ask for a tax increase, and we don't have, we're gonna have to actually confront that because we've added another 100,000 plus on in payroll expenses to do the work that we're currently doing. We pay our employees now, we get the audits done on time, we're moving forward. I think you guys are doing a great job. Your employees are doing a great job. The question is this a county that can afford to add expenses?
And you know, the other comment I saw in you about the Affordable Care Act, well, you know, I'm still working, so I still get that form that's printed out by my employer. Basically, it's a form that says, you know, you got health care this month, this month, this month, this month. That's it. That's the Affordable Health Care Act form that they send to the employees along with a W-2. I don't think it's a big deal. And they tell you to send it to the IRS with your taxes. It's not. You know, I agree with you. The payroll's being done. They haven't been taxed that much. And I'm not in favor of spending any additional money. I mean, I've got that. You know, Ms. Keller asked me about that. How does that work? Well, you know, I get that. I can pull up my payroll. Unfortunately, in the break room, there's a couple hundred people sometimes, and there's one computer, so I don't pull up my payroll until after everybody goes home or whatever, or pull it up if I even pull it up. So. I don't see a lot of people pulling it up. As long as they got money in the bank, they're not looking at that thing. So.
Any questions for Mr. Swets? Anyone?
And why can't we put that online now? We got an IT department. Why can't you put that stuff online and have people access it? All right, I get a paper here, but you know, you can shove it in email if you want to.
Anyone else? Yes.
I would
go
like
ahead.
to add, I mean, you know, to talk about the Affordable Care Act, that's been in place for a long time, for several years. I assume all that paperwork's going out, or we would have heard about that. And the federal withholding stuff that changed, that's all been done. That was done in February. That had to be done. So, you know, the payroll synchronization and putting everybody on the same type of payroll system is a one-time fix. And I get it, it's a big job, but you could have hired a consultant for a whole lot less than you've already paid ADP, and a whole lot less than you plan to pay them to do a one-time fix, just to put that synchronization in place, because once it's done, it's done. I heard repeatedly that this was discussed in public, and I just have to say, I had to go back and look, because I honestly did not remember it being discussed. And so the only place I found it discussed, and here's why I didn't know, was because it was November 1st, 2016. It was in the budget hearings that were for the 2017 budget. And I was not at that meeting. Mr. McGinley, you presided at that meeting, and it was the budget hearings. I listened to the audio of it. And at that meeting, that's where it was discussed. There was 10 minutes of discussion on it. In November of 2016. That was the public discussion. The justification of it in 2016 was that we wanted to have the payroll system in place for the new auditors. This was Mr. Swets' justification, that for the first year with the new auditors, we wanted to have the payroll system in place because it would be really helpful. Guess what? Those auditors are in their second year now. That justification is gone. The other thing that was said in that meeting was that there was no set contract, but that they estimated $150,000. So there was your estimate. All you had to do, and this goes back to the budget ordinance, you know, itemize that, $150,000. That's our estimate of what it's going to cost for a contract. But at the time, he said there was no set contract. But Mr. Pedri said that he was in negotiations for a contract. There was a little discrepancy about whether there was an RFP going out. Mr. Pedri said that he was discussing a contract. He said in that meeting, it would go in front of council for final review to make sure it's something you want to do. That's right off the audio. To make sure it's something you want to do. And he also said at the time, Mr. Williams questioned him, and he said it was going to be a 5-year contract. The next time we heard about this was after it was signed. It was signed in May, and it was the next time we talked about it was at my request at the end of June 2017. That's the total of the public discussion that took place on the ADP thing. So I think that it really, I'm glad that this is coming before council, but I really think you all need to decide if it's something you want to do, because that's what the manager said the first time he talked about it. Make sure it's something you want to do. Do you think that it's worth it to have the bells and whistles but still add $100,000 a year to tie ourselves in as a county to $500,000 or more in expenses to do payroll, which is already being done? I know you know what my answer is.
If any other council wants to go first, I'll go last.
I don't think there was anybody. Go ahead.
Okay. So I agree with what Ms. Houck says. The audit was obviously done on time. I think my contention is better utilization of resources. I've said this at council meetings. I don't get paid any less if I copy or if I work on the audit. Trying to utilize the best level of resources. My staff, whether it's myself, the deputy, the accounts payable, will gladly do anything under the accounting realm. We've done it before and it's gone out. I don't think that's the best utilization of resources. I think we can be better utilized giving council things that Ms. Houck requested today, some other things that we talked about when Ms. Houck was chair of. Hey, wouldn't it be nice if we had, instead of New World reports, draft financial statements without notes? These are things that, guess what, other counties and other places do. We can't get to them. Why? Because we're firefighting and in the minutia. I'm trying to move us forward. If county council doesn't want to do it as a majority, I'm fine with that. But I'm just saying, we're leaving it go. If you don't want to go with ADP or add staff, that's fine, but everything's going to continue as is. Don't put it on my plate then. That's all I'm asking for. And it's council's decision, not mine.
It really comes down to this. What does the county want to do to move the county forward? When I got as county manager, I said, listen, we got to take certain aspects of business and run this county as a business in certain aspects of it. You're talking about a 1,500 person workforce. ADP pays 1 out of 6 Americans in the United States of America. We are getting them in the place where we're at. And listen, for them I understand Ms. Houck said we didn't talk about it. I feel like that's all we've been talking about recently. I think ADP and the word charter have been probably the two often discussed words in this room since we're here. So we're here to talk about it. This contract is in front of council if you would like to review it. The question is, do you want to move the county forward? Here's a way to do it. Here's a way to free up budget and finance to do other things. Here's a way to utilize our options. I would say this. I haven't seen Brian in about a week and a half because I have him doing odd stuff. There are a bunch of reports that I need to get done that I would love to get done, but Brian's doing stuff on his audit. Meanwhile, he's got another person doing payroll. Meanwhile, he's got another person reviewing the budget. Meanwhile, he's got the Treasurer's Department collecting all of our tax money. This is a very busy department. ADP will allow us to move the county forward.
Anyone else?
I think one other thing is, and I agree with Ms. Houck that, obviously it's an extension, and then you'd have future years which would also come before councils, but we have a valid contract which we have expenses for. So as I said, whether you want to argue if we're 70% done, 80% done, we go live in May or October, because obviously it's going to be rolled out correctly. I'm not pushing for a date. We have expenses in a contract we have to pay. So if we want to pay over $100,000 for the work that we've had done up to now, but still didn't address the problem, we can do that too.
Yes.
Well, you know what? Council did not approve the contract. So if there's any money that's owed, the money that has already been paid to ADP, and any money that's owed in this current contract is not going to be hung around council's neck, because council did not approve this contract. It was never brought to council. I don't know where the authority came to sign that contract, but that was signed without council's approval or even knowledge. In the audio that I listened to, there was not even a firm mentioned. Not even the name of the firm was mentioned. The contract was signed. We didn't know anything about it being signed. So any costs associated with this first year are not on council. And you don't go forward with a decision to do a multi-year contract because, oh, we already owe them this much money, so let's keep paying them more money for the next 4 years.
That's the majority of
The
council
decision is, what do you want to do? As the manager said in November, it was gonna come to council to see if this is something you really wanted to do. That's the decision. What do you really wanna do? Do you wanna spend more money to do payroll? Do you wanna keep doing it with our staff? What do you wanna do as a council? We were denied that choice when this contract was signed.
You clearly have the right now, this contract, this is your contract to review, so whatever your choices be from here. Once again, we discussed it numerous times in public, and we discussed it at the council meeting from there. We've been at every if you want to go through budget hearings, everybody's been in this room has been through budget hearings where we went line by line by line by line, we reviewed it, we went back again, we came back around again another time. Listen, we're not gonna, I can't go back to November 2016 and say this is the situation that we had. I looked at this contract, we signed the contract. I'm not relitigating that over and over and over again. Right now, we have ADP in here where we're at. It's a valid contract. It's a legal contract. Every contract that I approved as the county solicitor and every contract that I've signed as county manager, none of them has ever been challenged in a court of law. So every single one of them stand. And you know, I stand by my decision and my signature on every single one of those. And I don't make those decisions lightly. But I'm not here to relitigate that over and over and over again. What I'm here on is this is a new contract for county council. And you can make a decision whether or not you want to proceed with this. And I'm not saying if you don't want to proceed with it, that's fine. We'll go in a different direction.
Mr. McGinley, if I could say one more thing. You know, Mr. Pedri, you referred to the line-by-line budget review, which I started doing 3 years ago. We do go through the budget line by line to try to make sure we understand where our money's going, why we're spending money. And we have people sit in front of us and we're asking them if they could double-side copies so that they cut their paper bill in half. And you're gonna sign a contract that commits us to spend an extra $100,000 to do work that's already being done. I mean, you know, we have people that come here and have a budget of $300 for like office supplies or something. We're asking them if they could cut it down to $250. But then on the other hand, you know, turn around and sign a contract that commits us to over $100,000 a year. I don't know how you do budget hearings with a straight face after that.
Here's how we do them. Sorry.
Okay. We're not getting into that aspect. Talk about the facts.
Right. The other thing is
Pedri,
that
do you have anything else? Nope.
just one comment, you know, the manager doesn't want to collect the taxes for the city of Wilkes-Barre. We thought that was a good idea as commissioners because we had to pay 1/3 of the cost of the operation of the treasurer's office over in City Hall, so we brought that in-house. Now, if you don't want to do it, maybe we need to look at an alternative for that too.
I'll collect the taxes in Wilkes-Barre.
No, I'm talking about our tax. Our taxes used to be collected by the city of Wilkes-Barre, but we were paying 1/3 of the cost of their office. And we decided to bring them into the county to be collected. But you mentioned, you know, you're collecting taxes. I mean, if you don't want to do that, maybe we need to look for an alternative for that too.
I don't want to add that to the county.
Okay, that's a different topic. Anyone else on ADP?
Please.
Yes, Mr. Cutler.
I called the New World. There are 8 counties in Pennsylvania using New World. One of them adjoins us. They have 1,100 employees counting part-timers. They have 7 in their budget office, 2 people dedicated to payroll all year. I think we have 5 in our budget office, is that correct?
6 with our clerk, and 1's a bank run clerk.
All right. We have ballpark 1,450 employees?
Yep, correct.
So I also, in talking to you and some others, there have been situations where sickness and or vacation came up during a payroll weekend. And you haven't talked about it. I'm glad you didn't. That shows a little bit of humility. But you were here on, I think, one Thanksgiving weekend because people were not available to work and you were doing the payroll. Now, being the boss, that's part of your job, but I think that's not efficient use of the employee. I look at this as, I talked to a man who ran a business which was about 5 times the size of the county and the number of employees, and they had ADP. And his response to me was, Gene, if you don't spend the money up front, you're gonna spend it the other end. You should really get another employee, 2 or 3, whatever the proper number is, to do payroll, period. Now, if you hire 2 people, you say 3, but if you hire 2 people, you're gonna have to pay benefits, and I think that will exceed the $100,000 a year within a short time. If ADP doesn't do the job, we have no contract with them for benefits or anything like that. We have a contract with a certain amount of time. If we don't like what they're doing, we get rid of them. We get somebody else, or then we find out we have to do some other method. But I'm for finishing this thing up, paying the money up front, and getting the product done. I talked to the young man on my right, and Mr. Urban just said, the payroll that you have is ADP. Very good product.
Yes, it is.
So I'm all for moving forward and hiring ADP, or finishing the contract rather.
Anyone else with questions? Thank you, Mr. Swetzer. Ms. Crispel, thank you for your patience, and
I don't know that I want to follow that.
and I thank the gentleman from Montgomery County for coming up.
So just to follow up from our presentation that we had a few weeks, what has transpired since then, we have 2 contracts to present to council. One would be lease to purchase electronic poll books if they so decide, and also purchase outright contract. I also included, Mr. Haas has asked that I provide what our paper poll books cost annually, approximately. So on page 40, I was able to provide that figure. We have letters of recommendation from our election board, which you can find that on page 163, as well as the recommendation of the review committee that was put together, and also Carl Romanelli, who is a seasoned judge of elections for Luzerne County. Do we have questions? Do we want to talk more about the electronic poll books?
The most important thing in this regard is, I think everybody had a chance to see the poll books when they were here, which I think they're well done. But the big thing is a decision whether to go ahead with a leasing over a 5-year period versus a potential purchase. And if you just focus on that and tell us what the cost would be for the 5 years versus a purchase.
So the cost for a 5-year, it's going to be $75,413.03.
And what do we have in our budget currently for that?
$75,413, which was
So we do have $75,000 in the current year budget.
correct.
Thank you.
Over a 5-year period, that will amount to $377,065. If we were to purchase outright, that's $324,802.
So roughly a $50,000 differential.
And based off of the paper poll book cost, the systems will have paid for themselves by the primary election of 2023. So before the 5-year lease period and less money.
Based on the current costs?
Based on the $324,802
Yeah.
and the current cost of poll books.
Yeah.
One thing I did not include in that estimate of what the paper poll books cost us is the number of calls that the inspectors actually take on election day in regards to voter location from the polling places. I did not include that.
Questions for Ms. Crispel?
I just want to make sure I understand that. So it would be, you're saying $324,000 to purchase them, period?
Mm-hmm. And
Whereas
75.
the lease would be $377 over 5 years.
Correct. But it's a lease to purchase. We'd be put on a payment program, basically.
Okay.
So at the end of 5 years, we own the books if we lease them?
Correct.
If we go ahead and purchase them now, we would own them immediately?
And own them immediately.
We currently have $75,000 allocated for this in the budget. If the council decides to go with the purchase option, we'd have to also bring forward an ordinance to take money out of the reserve in order to do that. The administration doesn't have the extra $250 allowed to purchase. we do have the money to start the lease, as that was the original intention. But it's up to council as to how you want to proceed.
Mr. McGinley, question.
Go ahead.
Does the lease, does the purchase include a maintenance for the 5 years included in the cost, or does the lease to purchase include maintenance?
Neither contracts include the maintenance, the hardware and software maintenance for the full term. The first year is included in both contracts. So currently we spend $52,000 annually for the hardware and software maintenance agreements for the Ivotronics, the 650s, and the Unity software, which is the tabulation and programming software. We will be negotiating with ES&S to include the electronic poll books as well as the software for the electronic poll books. And we would negotiate a different price. What is currently in the contract as being presented is $22,500 annually for the electronic poll books, hardware and software after the first year. But because we have those other services, we are going to negotiate that.
So both contracts are the same as far as the first year, the maintenance is covered, and starting with the second year, we would have to cover that cost.
Correct.
If I could, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Haas, go ahead.
Yeah, Ms. Crispo, thanks so much. This is fantastic. I'm looking at page 40 of your paper poll book cost analysis. Thanks for drawing that up. And it looks like, we're going to have considerable savings, about $100,000 during presidential years. And this is for the poll books, right? With the shredding, the implementation, and election day and everything. Am I right in reading that?
That is correct. The only thing not included in that analysis is the number of calls and the time that it takes on election day that is dedicated to just locating a voter for a polling place, where that information is going to
I know that's busy.
readily at their hands at the polling place. So we'll be freed up to
I know
answer
that's in the hundreds.
other concerns.
I know it's an awful lot. Will we see, how do we, obviously like things like the shredding and the printing, we're going to see immediate savings with that. But do you see a reduction in a staff or a reassignment perhaps if this goes through?
Basically, what it's going to end up doing is we are going to be able to allow the inspectors to get to their backlog of voter registration applications. Currently, while they're doing the vote history, all of the backlog of all of the voter registration that ends 30 days prior to the election, that's just sitting there and accumulating. So they're going to be able to get to that backlog a lot sooner than if they were doing the vote history. We also have to focus too on not just what is going to free up their time. We have to look at the accuracy. The limitation that we have right now is with paper poll books, all of the signatures are stored on paper. Electronic signatures will be able to update the voter registration system almost immediately now, where we do not have the time to do that. That's not even in this cost analysis, to manually update the signatures of the voters in the system.
And I know you spoke to that last time you were before council, speaking about how this is not necessarily cost savings across the board, but it's a step forward in accuracy and make sure we have restored trust in elections with all the crazy things going on. But I'd be willing to say, look, if we can save even in an off-year elections here, $67,000, that almost covers $75,000 a year. I would. It's prudent to buy something up front and save the $50,000, but perhaps that's the best way to stick with the 5-year agreement like we budgeted for. And reading through the contract, I'm bouncing over to page 44 and 45. I don't think, from what I can read, and maybe somebody can help me through this, it doesn't look like there's any benefit between owning the hardware or leasing it. Because I'm looking at number 4, term of license, and I'm looking here on page 44 out of 197, everybody, that it says you got a 1-year period, a 1 year for the term of license. And I wish the ES&S guys were there, because I would ask, well, what is that rate? And if you bounce down to number 5 updates, actually it looks like subsections number 1, 2, and 3. This includes. I asked also. I was afraid that these would go defunct, kind of like an iPhone. It's funny that you include that in the back. I thought that was a nice touch, by the way. That was so true to form. But I'm I'm concerned more about the consistent updates and things like this. And I know companies need to make their money and they need to pay their staff, but these kind of service agreements is what really rakes us over. And I don't know if we can even get a hold of that. What's the current rate? And then at the top of page 45, the third question I have going through this contract is the customer, there at the very top, the second sentence on page 45, customer shall be solely responsible for the cost of any replacements, retros, modifications to the equipment. And I want to know how often does that happen? You know, if we're looking at 5 years, why should we buy it? Because we're just going to be fixing our own stuff anyway. Perhaps leasing would be the way to go for this. And the last one, number 8, warranty with the equipment and software. ES&S warrants it for a 1-year period. It'll repair or replace any component. Same thing. If we buy it, then that warranty's gone after a year. But if we lease it, then it's their hardware. They're obligated to fix it as far as I read the contract. But I do know that our purchasing, you included the emails there, and I want to know if they ask similar questions. It's on page 51 about the leasing/buying update. And looks like Mr. Mikowski talked about having some questions. I want to know if you would need the specific questions, because they might be the ones that I had. Sorry for being long-winded again.
Okay. Well, past the 1-year warranty, that's where the hardware and software agreements come in. We have to do the same exact thing for the Ivotronics, the 650s, any of the voting equipment that we look to in the future. It's only going to be a limited warranty, and we're going to have to purchase a warranty outside of that pay period or that bracket. We actually do have an ES&S representative here.
Fantastic.
Joe.
Hi, Mr. Haas. This is Joe Passarella. I was here last time, and thank you for allowing us to come back. Just a couple quick things. I'm not exactly sure what the question was. There was a lot thrown in there, but we, whether you lease or purchase it, they're yours. As soon as you accept them, they're yours. We don't, I mean, from the day you accept them, we consider them to be yours, except you have a payment plan instead of one payment. So the service is no different from that. One of the reasons we went with Microsoft instead of iPads and Androids is because Microsoft guaranteed their license at least through 2026. So it puts us on there. One other thing I like to say is our company, we've been in business for 40 years. A lot of companies have come and gone. I think we stated that last time we were here. A lot of voting machine companies came out in the Help America Vote Act, and they're no longer around. And we picked up the service on a lot of them. We have never, ever discontinued service on any of our products, ever. We have products that are 2 generations old, optical scanners that are still in parts of the United States that we're still servicing and upgrading with anything that we can upgrade them with. So we're going to be there for you to make sure that you're okay even in future years. I think we have a good history in Luzerne, and we're looking forward to continuing it. And one other thing.
I appreciate that's helpful. I mean, we're ordering 220 units. And what would an annual license be for one of those units? Do you know offhand?
Again, the one thing is Marissa's looking up the price right now, but we are going to try to $102.50. However, we are trying to bundle that with a whole service agreement for your voting machines also. After your first year, because the first year is free, so that we can try to bundle something to make it a little more like one big package for a county that purchases both systems. And one thing that I did want to say when we talk about the advantages, and we're talking about the financing only, and you were talking about how it would be a lot easier on your inspectors. The biggest thing is in a presidential election, how it's going to benefit your voters, because the line will go much faster. I can't say we're going to eliminate lines. That's an impossibility. Like 40 people come at once. You're not going to have an A to L book and an M to Z book where you have 30 people in this line and 2 in that. Both, you're going to be able to get them through. You look people up in 15 seconds as opposed to maybe 45 seconds to a minute. So that's one benefit I just wanted to say. I know it might not answer the financing, but I wanted to point that out.
One of the, to spin off of that, one of the things we're going to experience this election cycle, and actually May 15th, is in Hazel Township District 1, because the congressional lines were split. And we will not have electronic poll books in time for that election. We are going to have 2 separate paper poll books, one for the 8th Congressional and 9th Congressional. And we're going to have poll workers simultaneously looking up voters as they come into the precinct to determine, oh, do you get an 8th or do you get a 9th ballot? Then we're going to have to rely on the paperwork to go to the machine operator to make sure that voter gets that correct district so they can issue the correct ballot. Electronic poll book, it's instantaneous. It would be printed out within minutes, not even.
Yeah, I acknowledge that's been billed to the Supreme Court directly. They can pay that one. That was their doing. But I really do appreciate, Ms. Crystal, that I think I just did the math here. It's about $12,000 a year for licensing. And again, I understand. I think aside from Mr. McGinn, they started the meeting honoring our 911 director and staff. And this is fair elections are ranked right up there with public safety. That's one of our big things we're commissioned to do here. And I'm a big fan of the whole process. The gentleman came out last time, put on a great show, and I think it's just about, like we said at the beginning of this part of the meeting, how do we finance this and how do we move forward?
Anyone else? Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thanks for being patient.
Thank you. I'm going to go eat dinner.
We have to do the CCS tonight? Well, you tell me. Okay, Mr. Rakovich, you're going to be up. We're going to skip number 8. You have the information. We'll talk about that on the next work session. Mr. Parsick will be next, and then Mr. Pedrick.
Council, for your review is the Correct Care Solutions contract. Just give council where we're at with this contract at this point. We are currently in a 30-day extension from the previous contract. We have an RFP on the street right now for continuing services. Mr. Rakovich has been meeting with a bunch of different proposals, but this contract will allow us to have medical services throughout the process. If we decide to go with a different vendor than CCS, this contract can be canceled within 120 days.
Mr. Rakovich?
The closing for the current RFP, which we have out, is April 30th. We have had 6 companies tour the facility, top to bottom. We're right now in the process of responding to the questions which they have for us, which are extremely extensive. And we'll be closing it on the 30th. We have tentative oral presentation scheduled for May 7th. And hope to have the contract awarded, May 27th would be when we would pick our provider for this.
Okay.
It's our obligation to provide medical and mental health services. They're the company that we currently have. Had 2 one-year extension options with this company. It is being RFP'd right now, and we're going to choose, the best one that we believe will fulfill the needs of our facility.
The questions that are being posed to you, do you have a time frame to get them back to the vendors?
We do. It is within the next week.
Within the next week? So they'll have a couple of weeks then to respond?
To respond with the questions that they have, and we're struggling with
Will
the
all
questions.
the vendors who submit proposals be invited for an oral presentation?
I don't think we're going to ask all of them to submit an oral presentation. We want to just take a look at what they're basically offering. If we have 2 or 3 top candidates, then we'll probably have them.
So you may screen that down depending
Yes.
on what kind of proposals you get back?
Correct.
Any questions, Mr. Rakovich? Ms. Saban?
Did Correct Care put in for a RFP?
Yes, they did. Along with 5 others.
Anything else? Thank you, Mr. Rakovich. Thanks for your work.
Thank you.
Mr. Parstick?
So the terms of the court-related contract that was voted on tonight
are as follows. The articles that were changed, as the preamble, the 1620 rights were added for the district attorney regarding the hiring, discharge, and supervision of her employees. Under Article 4, information, there was just a language change. Under Article 21, health and welfare, there was a language change regarding FMLA. Article 22, salary and wages, there was language added protecting the district attorney's 1620 rights in regards to the salary and wage scale. Under Section 1, in 2018, employees will receive a 2% increase. In 2019, a 2.5% increase. In 2020, a 2.5% increase. And in 2021, a 2.75% increase. The starting salaries for all classifications will increase as follows: in 2018 by $250, in 2019 by $300, in 2020 by $250, and in 2021 by $350. Under Section 4, there are about 18 positions in the district attorney's office that will receive a one-time salary base rate adjustment of $300. And under Article 25, seniority, there was a language change regarding furloughs. The new contract will run for 4 years, 2018 through 2021. And under the sheriff's Appendix D, the changes are as follows. Under the uniform section, there was language added that a deputy at their choice can use a portion of their annual allowance to purchase up to 100 rounds of ammunition for practice. Section 4, if the deputy sheriff decided to alter the uniforms either by color or requirements, the county will give a grace period for the deputies to comply with that. That way they won't have to use their entire clothing allowance to make that change. There's a bilingual stipend that will be added for any deputy who can pass a Spanish proficiency test. It would be a $250 stipend paid to those employees who can remain certified to help and perform bilingual services in that department. And that's about it.
Anything else?
Just one question.
Mr. Urban.
I think Mr. Griffith asked, I think for the public's knowledge, was there any change to the hours worked? And could you tell me what the hours worked are in those contracts?
The hours worked in those contracts are either 32 and a half hours a week or 35.
Was there any change to healthcare?
The healthcare was not. The current healthcare contributions are 12% and 15%.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Thank you. Mr. Pedri? You're done, or?
Yeah, we already did it. And if anybody has any questions regarding the manager's report, let me know.
Thank you. Public comment? Cave is gone. Spangler is gone. Javer. Mr. Shiner? Mr. Rabel?
Just to answer a few things from the work session. Mr. Schnee asked about the speeding along the process for the blighted committee. If there's an owner that buys a blighted property, they have 1 year to remediate that under an amended law that actually I helped the State Blight Task Force on in 2016. It was reduced from 18 months to 12 months for regular properties. Now, bank-owned properties, that's a whole different story. That has to do with the zombie properties that the banks haven't foreclosed on. That's still 600 days. And that needs to be reduced. Now, under the Senate Urban Affairs Committee, they were talking about reducing it in 2017, but the banks were like leery on that. So I think it should be 365 days, that you have 1 year to foreclose. The banks would have to foreclose before they have to, just okay, then the municipalities have to do something with it. Because I don't think it's fair to the adjacent property owners that are just, have to put up with the deterioration near them. With regards to the presented administrative code amendment by Ms. Hauk, I was amazed by what I heard by the solicitor and the manager about stopping government about that, because I checked with the state website, and wouldn't you know it, that the state for Department of General Services has a procurement code that says that you have to list anything with regards to money, a contract over a certain amount. Actually, the state requires anything over 18,100 to be listed, and that has to be brought forward. So I will send that to all of the members of council, and that's in the purchasing guidelines for the state, for all municipal and local governments. It's in there, so I'll send that to you. And finally, with regards to the $5 fee, I was surprised that the PennDOT representative didn't tell you this, but that $2 million, that match, well, there is a kind of a catch to it. And I think Mr. Schnee could even appreciate this. Recycled asphalt is required, mixes ground up pavement millings with oil and resurfacing roads for low volume roads and rebuilt shoulders. That's included in that $2 million. So basically, what it means is for low traffic areas, for those county roads or those bridges, that $2 million is for. And I don't know if the manager knows of the low traffic bridges that money could be utilized for, but I think that with regards, if it's coming from federal money, why doesn't the county just apply directly to the federal grants? And I have that grant information, so I don't understand why the go-between. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rabel.
That's.
Mr. Ola?
Well, I've been heartened tonight, shocked as I am. Number one, thank you, Mr. Haas, if you can hear me. One person around here knows how to do lease versus buy analysis. Number two, add a person to Mr. Brominski, who understands what EBITDA is. Is Mr. Sweat still here? Gone? I was curious, maybe it's an action item question for next week's or next time's meeting. Do the external auditors require the county to do an EBITDA pro forma schedule? You have to, as numerous people have mentioned, paying down a debt is not performance. And the EBITDA schedule gets to that, because it measures true performance. You have to pay down your debt schedule, otherwise you go in default. That's simple. Again, and this is many years ago, when the only company on earth making vertically integrated computers, don't laugh too hard, created in 1982 the first 1 MIPS machine, which is nothing compared to now. And the volume of their activities in terms of transactions were maybe 10,000 times the amount this county is doing. And they did it with one part-time payroll clerk. Okay. Before all the bells and whistles that we have today. Okay. So anything less than that is poor performance. That's simple. Okay. It's just management 101. And to do anything less, We have to remember that, as someone mentioned, we still have a lot of debt here, folks. And, you know, we're still avoiding any approvals or any alternatives to any project that we want to spend money on. That's got to stop. Like I said in previous times over and over again, there's never been a project that didn't have an alternative. It may not be as good, but every project in the history of mankind has always had an alternative. And we never talk about them here. I can very quickly come up with a handful of alternatives to what we heard tonight. And the ones that most, not even world-class, normal companies do, takes care of Mr. Sweats's January-February dilemma. And when I was fortunate enough to run a large computer company's finance, we had not local auditors, but the cream of the crop who got paid by finding stuff. And I had them out of my plant in 2 weeks, not 4 months, okay? And it was much more complex than county accounting. Thank you.
Anyone else? A motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. Keller, second?
Second.
Mr. Urban, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Sharon.
What time do
Good
you
night.
have to work for? 5.